Matt LaCroix, welcome back. I'm very excited to talk to you, bro. Where did we leave off last time? We were talking about a lot of crazy stuff, and because you, on the last podcast that you did, you had just returned from Turkey, I think?
Yeah, this show is actually going to be a really wonderful expansion off of everything that we were laying out last time and discussing, because so much has happened since the last show that we did, and a lot of what we were talking about before, Danny, and of course, it's always a pleasure to have conversations with you, my friend. I really, truly appreciate talking to you.
I'm pumped, man.
Yeah, I am too about this. And so last time we were laying out this mystery, right? We'll set the stage here. This mystery of, do we have a lost civilization, a lost chapter of our history that has not been acknowledged by mainstream scientists, academics, you know? And that has been fought over for a long time. You know, there's academics like, for instance, Dr. Robert Schoch, who's part of my team, who has, you know, presented a lot of really significant evidence to show the water erosion on the Sphinx enclosure. But things like that have still not shifted the narrative. It still remains the same, right, Danny, that our civilization emerged 6,500 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, and anything that exists before that is hunter-gatherers and primitive. And that has been a fierce line that very few academics have wanted to cross.
Yeah, but wasn't there a recent article that came out? This might have been more than a year ago, actually, that they found a skull in China that they said was over 1 million years old. Remember that article, Steve, that we pulled that up recently in a podcast? There's research that's coming out, that's dripping out, where
showing it's older.
Like everything just keeps getting older and older and older. So like there are definitely academics that are researching this stuff and publishing on it. 1-million-year-old skull rewrites human evolution, scientists claim. This was published September of 2025. So about 3 months ago.
And I think
crazy, dude.
Well, that's where we're going to continue to see these new pieces of evidence coming out that are challenging the old narrative.
And it says it says that it's our species. So our species goes back a million years at least.
And that's why what I'm about to present and what we're about to talk about should not be that shocking then, right? If we consider the fact that...
Well, normies aren't reading these articles. That's the problem. We gotta initiate the normies.
Okay, well, we're going to bring some evidence today, Danny, that is, I believe, paradigm shifting. And I'm not going to say that grandiose statement without backing it up with extensive evidence. What we're about to go over is historic. And I mean that on the most serious sense, okay? This is not something that can go back in the box. This is Pandora's box opening.
Is this new research that you've recently discovered?
This is based on a number of months after our podcast. When we filmed in Turkey, we finished the filming, and I'll give a little snapshot to where we were. We had finished filming in 6 countries. 6 countries. We had Cambodia, we had Turkey, we had in the United States at Penn Museum, in the Archive Museum, right? Peru, Bolivia, and then and then of course the Philippines, and we added the last one, which is part of my discovery, which is I'm going to get into here. So essentially, we were done. We were going to do all post-processing on the documentary. We were going to do all the editing. It was time, right? I was very proud of what we'd done, or I am very proud of it. And I felt like what we had laid down was a lot of evidence to really show that there was a forgotten or missing chapter of human history, but not a primitive chapter, quite a sophisticated chapter. Not talking about cell phones and computers, but their own level of sophistication and understanding and high level of knowledge. And what I didn't expect, though, Danny, is how everything unfolded after. And so I think we need to spell this out and lay out some things before we get to that moment, though, because we're kind of jumping too far. Okay. So what we were essentially talking about in the last show is there a lost chapter of human history? And I was showing you similar symbols in different parts of the world, similar megalithic masonry, right? And we were talking about them. We were talking about ancient cuneiform tablets. We were discussing Adapa, being, and all those things. Well, this is going to take that to a completely different level. We're going to go down a road in which we can actually say, not only do these symbols match around the world, but we can now prove what they mean, what they're leaving behind for us to understand, and what those implications are for history. And that's what we're going to lay down in the show. And I guess I'll start with just this example right here really quick, just to set the stage here, Danny. I think it's helpful if people see these things, because when you talk about them, you say,
yes.
Oh, by the way, have you ever seen how big the megalithic masonry blocks are at Ollantaytambo? Most people are like, I don't know. I've never seen that before. Well, take a look at these. So for
people listening, this is going to be a very visual podcast. So I highly recommend either watching the video version on YouTube or on Spotify, but this is one you're definitely going to want to see with your eyes.
Yeah, there's a lot of visuals and graphics. I spent an enormous amount of time putting these together because what I realized, Danny,
it's fantastic stuff, man.
Thank you. What I realized, though, when I started presenting this only recently, because I had to publish the book first. I could not talk about this discovery until the book was published. So The Missing Key, Ancient Code of a Lost Civilization, is out. I'm really excited for that to unveil this to the world so that, God forbid, if something happens to me, that this model and what I've found is preserved. So going back now, on the left, you see Ollantaytambo. It's in Peru. It's an ancient site that's considered Inca. And yet you have unbelievable granite stones that are sometimes in excess of 50 tons. A ton is 2,000 pounds. And around the world, you see the same thing. Here in the Van region of Turkey, you see megalithic masonry that looks extremely similar to other parts of the world. But we're told that they had no contact ever in history. And that any of the cultures that built them not only didn't have contact, but had no kind of advanced skills to build anything. And they've never really been able to explain how they've been able to do any of these things. And there's a reason for that, because they don't know.
Right.
And that's the truth. And so if we look at just these quick examples, as I'm pointing this out, there's a mystery here, Danny. There's a mystery in which humanity has to understand who built these. How did they build them? Why did they build them? And what we're going to get down to in this, as we go along here in this conversation and this research and this evidence, is answering those questions, but going much further than that. Going far beyond I ever imagined that I would ever get to. Again, as I pointed out, I was simply in this whole purpose of my journey in this. The documentary, the books, the trips all around the world with Dr. Robert Schoch and Hans Orheim and Omer Tanyurk and all these experts and archaeologists and geologists. We were just wanted to find evidence of a lost civilization so that narrative can finally exist. But what I found was about 1,000 miles beyond that. And I never imagined that would happen. I wasn't planning on that. I'm like, wow, this is going to be incredible when I find, no, I didn't know that any of this was going to lead to what it did. And that's where, when the audience is listening to this right now and seeing this, we're starting with stones. And where we end up, maybe that moment where people are sitting quiet, contemplating everything. Because this is the most advanced ancient code ever left before in human history. This civilization left, I'm not showing the code yet.
Okay.
What I'm about to get into and show is a highly advanced code in which they meticulously left it around the world so that when they were destroyed, in which they knew, because they were tracking cycles, they knew their own destruction, Danny. And they knew that this knowledge was so fundamentally important that if it was lost, civilization could go down a very dark road, a road of war and destruction and disconnection. And so here we are at this very interesting time in human history when justification exists somewhere that war is okay and that we should be doing all these terrible things and have all the division and all these things around the world and polluting the earth and all of it, right? It's like we have this justification that we're allowed to do it. Why? Well, because we based ourselves on something. We based ourselves on this. This is the timeline of human history in which everything that we think we know about ourselves comes from. So if Danny Jones was saying, I want to try to understand myself from an origin age, you would look at this and you would say, okay, so everything started 12,000 years ago, and everything since then has emerged into civilizations that eventually became war cultures and went on to become what we are now. Well, what we're going to do is basically destroy this timeline. We're not going to take all the pieces that are in front of you that are known about, for instance, things like the Roman Empire and others.
Right.
But there are pieces of this that we are going to completely have to take and move very far in another direction. Okay? Because the timeline that we know of right now for human civilization is completely antiquated and outdated, especially based on a lot of the new evidence that it's emerging. And so if you look on the left side where the arrows are, we're told that 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age ended, and that's the transition from hunter-gatherers to societies of agriculture. Okay?
Right.
Why am I telling you this? Because if you look at how human history continued beyond that point, we got to this place of having to start over again. You see how they show, look right there, the Ice Age ends right there, hunter-gatherer societies. Look how primitive they look. Well, there is some truth to the idea that we were completely reset to having to go back to hunter-gathering and starting fires. I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing that that happened. But what about before that? That's where this whole thing is going to open up.
Well, that's probably when the pyramids were built.
And that's what we're going to get into, is that this entire chapter you're looking at is not the only chapter of human civilization, but the second chapter.
Yes.
And so that is what we're going to...
Or third or fourth, who knows?
Right. Or let's just say not the first. How about that? We'll say not the first chapter.
Right.
And that's where this is very important that we sit here for a second. Again, we justify our actions with all the violence and war around the world. I mean, there's not a better time to talk about this than right now.
Right.
We justify this based on one very specific fact right here, that we emerged as war empires, okay, somewhere around 4,000 years ago with the Egyptian empires, the Ottoman empires, and the Assyrian empires, and the Akkadian empires, and the Babylonian empires, the Mede civilizations. Those are what these images are.
Yep.
So what happens? Well, academics, scientists say, that's how we started. That's how we always were. We emerged from war cultures all battling each other. So then what happened? Darwin tries to understand what role we play with evolution for all the other species on Earth, right? You know this story. So he goes to the Galapagos, he's studying all the species. He doesn't understand humans don't seem to fit into anything.
Right.
Why? The only thing we seem to match are ants battling and fighting each other like red ants. Because it's one of the only species in the world that will go to war against each other. Anthills do.
Well,
So
it's interesting. Every other species on Earth is in this symbiosis with nature, right?
Exactly.
And there's this balancing act that happens in nature, and it, like you said, human beings don't really fit into that. We just like sort of tip the scales,
but we should.
right?
And so that is where this is going to go, is that, are we a war species? No. Again, the reason this is here is because of the state of the world. And I also, when I go through this work with people and I show the civilization that existed, this lost civilization, and I talk about how there was no war and how there was none of these things, people don't seem to understand why that's so important. Because we define ourselves on this. You see that, Danny? It gives us all the justification we have to say we've always done it. It's what we are, so that's why we should continue doing it. What we're about to do is show that none of these things ever existed. War didn't exist. Destroying the planet didn't exist. Living in harmony, in complete balance, was not only important, was necessary. And that this civilization basically unlocked every single secret and understanding that we don't know today. They were masters of everything that we don't understand. And that's why instead of looking forwards, as humanity moves forwards, we need to look back in order to understand probably far more than we ever imagine. And that's where this is going to go, is that, again, I wanted to start with this because it's a very important moment to point out that our timeline is based on our understanding of what we are, right? We're about to change that understanding. So if we change the understanding of what we are and what role we're supposed to play, then how will that then ripple out into what we are now?
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
And so let's do this, Danny. Let's rewrite the entire story. And I want to bring evidence in that is so astounding and shocking that people may have their jaws on the floor from some of this. Because honestly, some of the feedback I've already had from a lot of the audience and people that have seen this, it's mind-blowing. And it's been hiding almost in plain sight. Okay, so you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Okay, so
I'm ready.
It all begins with this idea of, where did we start? Well, remember the timeline, ancient Mesopotamia. That's true, but that's not the first chapter that started there. Imagine chapters of our history. One rises up, falls, gets destroyed. Another one builds in the exact same place because they understood it's important and various other reasons. And so you get this combination of civilizations, like a jumble of one on the bottom and then one that's built on top. And then archaeologists come and they go, oh, that's built by the same civilization. No. There's been more than one that's come and gone. And that's why the masonry looks so different, why the artifacts look so different, why the layers are completely different in where they are, okay?
Right.
So let's start with this. This is an actual real photograph. We talked about this a little bit last time, but I have to set the stage here. This is a mythical city called Shuruppak. It's considered one of the first cities in the tablets ever built. The tablets, ancient Mesopotamian tablets, for instance, the Sumerian king list, the Atrahasis, the Eridu Genesis, all those tablets discuss the same thing. They say there was 5 cities created first on Earth, and that nothing existed before then. And that after that, there were other cities and other emergences of those civilizations that came later on in history. But the wild thing is, though, is that even though the tablets state that Shuruppak was one of the original first 5 cities, academics don't. In fact, academics, up until potentially even now, believe that Shuruppak wasn't real. It was a myth. And that's the same thing that happened with Troy, right? When they found Troy in the 1800s in Western Turkey, all of a sudden they realized that this story that's been throughout history is based on a real place.
Sure.
So all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. So allegory and myth, is there truth woven into that?
Well, it's hard to know when you're just reading text, right? Because as you know, in modern day, texts tend to lie.
Yeah, and then it can be rewritten over time based on influences of other people. Well,
by its very nature, it's deceptive. Writing is deceptive.
It definitely is, which is why it's very interesting that this civilization that I have uncovered didn't leave any writings behind at all. They didn't believe in writing.
Right.
That might seem crazy until you go into the dialogues of Plato and Socrates. Do you know that Socrates told Plato, basically his emphasis or his stature on the whole idea of writing versus talking was that he didn't believe that anything should be written down because it could be misinterpreted too easily, which that's dangerous because then if you die and then it's just oral tradition, right? Well, there may be some truth to that because this civilization, as far as I'm aware, they left behind symbols and motifs, but no writings. So if you can put in a complex meaning, so let's say Danny Jones is like, well, I want to put in a super complex meaning of something. You can take a really large amount of information and condense it into one single thing. That's the brilliance behind symbols. So we think writing is so advanced, but actually symbols are far more advanced because they can carry complex meanings that can carry over through time, right?
Off kind of a random anecdote to this is, have you seen the crop circles that the guy in the Y Files, I saw this on a clip the other day, was showing these crop circles of basically it was pi. Have you seen this? It's insane. Like it's like these perfect this perfect diagram that's like printed into like a wheat chaff field or something.
Yeah.
And it like they took it and they like made a rendition of it, and it's like perfect. It's a perfect depiction of pi. It's insane.
And I think the reason for that is that is the level of knowledge that we're talking about that this civilization encoded.
Right.
So it's the same thing.
Sure.
What you're about to see, you're going to be like, oh, that's exactly what it is.
Okay. If you enjoy watching our show on Spotify or YouTube and you want to be more involved, I encourage you to please come check out our Patreon community. Not only does our Patreon community get every episode you see on YouTube early, fully uncensored, and ad-free, but we're also doing Patreon exclusive episodes as well as live Q&As, and you can get your personal questions answered by our guests every single week. For me, being able to collaborate and communicate back and forth with our Patreon community every week has been huge, and this is my way of saying thank you for the cost of a cup of coffee a month. Now back to the show.
But let's start here just for a minute here. I want to explain something. Now, you see on the right, I have Uruk and Gilgamesh. Okay, so this is the famous excavation of a place called Tel Farah, Iraq in 1931. That was the reason why I went to Penn Archive for the documentary, because Penn Archive in Pennsylvania has all the records from this excavation. So you can go and you can read through them all and you can actually see things you can't see online. So in that excavation expedition in 1931, they're trying to find Shuruppak, even though it's not real. Okay? And you see on the right that this 6 to 7 feet down, Uruk, you see that? U-R-U-K in Gilgamesh.
Yep.
Super important to remember this going forward. Why? Because academics still today, to this day now, will say that Uruk and Gilgamesh is where civilization began. That's
okay.
And if I go I'm just going to jump ahead just for a second and show you if no one believes me. You just do a Google search and look. So this is not me saying this. Academics actually believe that not only was Gilgamesh part of the Sumerian civilization, but Uruk was a Sumerian city.
Okay.
Which none of those are true. Neither of those are true.
But this is consensus, though.
Yes, this is consensus is in what they consider to be truth. The problem is that none of the tablets say that Uruk was one of the first cities at all.
Okay.
None of them do. So why are they saying that?
Right.
Well, because this is literally a lost time period of human history. So what I mean is, if you look at this image again, this is a real image. When they dug down way beneath what they called stratum layer number 2, which is the Uruk and Gilgamesh time period, which they identified in the reports. So it doesn't make any sense. They're already contradicting themselves. Anyway, when they discuss this, they state that they dug way down below Gilgamesh. Why? Well, they shouldn't have been, because nothing should have existed beneath there. Not only that, but like 60 or 70% of the team left because they didn't expect anything to find, because there's not supposed to be anything that exists beneath that layer. That layer of Gilgamesh represents the layer they consider to be the rise of human civilization. Does that make sense? And everything before then is hunter-gatherer, Stone Age.
Where did they find these tablets?
Well, the tablets have come from all throughout Iraq, places like Sippar and the Ashurbanipal Library, which are these ancient libraries that the Assyrian and Neo-Akkadian kings had preserved. So the tablets are all what we call Neo-Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian tablets. Now, they say they're Sumerian, but I have come up to evidence to show that there are no Sumerian tablets. It's all Neo-Akkadian tablets. Neo-Akkadian
was what time period?
Gilgamesh. Neo-Akkadian is 6,000 years ago during the time of Gilgamesh.
So they dug these tablets up in the same strata layer?
So they dig up the tablets from Gilgamesh, and they confirm that time period, that layer is Gilgamesh.
Got it.
With Uruk. But they keep digging. Why? And that's what it's so fascinating is in the report, again, most people left from the excavation. They keep digging. At 13 feet down, they hit a massive flood layer of material, completely void of all human evidence, just of evidence of a massive flood, just like the tablets describe. So ancient tablets like the Atrahasis and Epic of Gilgamesh, they describe an ancient flood, you know the narrative, that destroys the old world, right? Well, when they're excavating this site, which Shuruppak is supposed to exist before the flood, they find a flood layer 5 to 6 feet thick. That is unbelievably thick for an event like that, to create that. And then when they dig underneath it, they find Shuruppak. And they acknowledge that it's very interesting that Shuruppak exists beneath this flood layer and seems to coincide with the descriptions from the tablets of this great deluge, right? But then they go on to say that it has to be purely myth and speculative, and they are not willing to go any further. Now, when I found that excavation report, it in many ways was the beginning of what led to everything else. And that's why I'm starting here. Because not only do we need to start at the beginning, but this is what cracked open to me the first major academic crack of a paper that was contradicting itself, that had massive information and evidence of basically a lost civilization. That they were not acknowledging was that they were then falling back on myth and legend, okay? So again, I just pointed out that this is the problem, is that we are now having to say, well, okay, so Shurupak's not part of the Uruk Gilgamesh time period, then what time period is it part of that?
But the tablets write about Shuruppak.
Yes.
Okay.
So all the tablets discuss that Eridu to Shuruppak was the first 5 cities, ended with Shuruppak was the last. Uruk was a complete reemergence thousands of years later. And yet academics believe that that's when it all started.
Right.
So that's what we're essentially tackling right now.
Got it.
Okay. Now in this story, and that's why some of these slides are so important, because it's really complex stuff. I had been tracing this very mysterious phrase in tablets, and it's only in 2 cuneiform tablets. It's in a tablet called the Death of Gilgamesh, or Death of Gilgamesh, and it's in another tablet called the Enkian World Order tablet. They're both on here, so bear with me here for a moment. Now, this is super important that we go over this because you'll see that what this is what this lost civilization encoded, if that makes sense. So check out this here. They discovered the death of Gilgamesh in the 1800s. It's from Nippur, Iraq, right? It was pieced together by Assyriologist Samuel Noah Kramer. Great guy. Did the best he could at the time, right? He's a great Assyriologist. Now, I'm going to read this, and then I want to break it down really quick. Lord Gilgamesh, having erected stelae for future days, having founded temples of the gods, you reached Ziusudra in his abode. You brought to the land the Mies of Sumer that were forgotten forever, the commandments and rights. Danny, first of all, check this out. It says right there that this is Gilgamesh, by the way, who the story, if you're not familiar with it, if anyone has not read the Epic of Gilgamesh, have you read the Epic of Gilgamesh?
I've not read the original, but I've read like rough translations of it.
So let me just give a brief synopsis of what it is, because then you'll have to understand it versus what this is in context, okay?
Right.
So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh is a tyrant king, not so mythical. He's a tyrant king of the city of Uruk. See that? And he goes on a journey to find the secrets of immortality and learn all these lessons. And he meets a companion along the way named Enkidu. And there's all these astronomical connections they're allegorical and they're not real. But there's a journey still. There's a journey that exists in it. Why? Because Gilgamesh is with his companion Enkidu, and they're on this adventure. And Enkidu dies, gets killed. And Gilgamesh is so moved and so affected by this that he fears his own mortality so much that he becomes obsessed with this journey of finding immortality. That's what the Epic of Gilgamesh, the entire thing is about that, okay? He wants to live forever. Very noble of him, right? So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, if you read it, the way he finds how to, well, at least the way to be immortal, even though you can't be immortal, we'll say that,
Right.
is through this hero Ziusudra. You see that? Ziusudra, according to the tablets, is the last king of Shuruppak. Okay?
Okay.
That we were just looking at. And it's described that he's what all religions based the character on Noah on. All of them.
Right.
All Hebrew and Christian traditions base themselves loosely, I'm gonna emphasize loosely, on the original stories of what Ziusudra, his life, okay? No, there was not two of every animal. All that stuff was rewritten and added later. That's not what the tablets say. What they actually say is that Ziusudra is a great sage and a king of Shuruppak, and he's warned by his patron god Enki that a great disaster is going to come that is going to wipe out the old world. But the Anunnaki, the gods, the pantheon gods, made a pact that they're not supposed to tell anyone. No humans are supposed to know that this disaster is coming because they want to wipe them all out. That's what the story is.
Right.
It's from the Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh, both of them. They tell the same story. They completely overlap. So Ziusudra is warned by Enki of this catastrophe. So he is told to build this ark. We all know that story, right? And he lands up in the Mount Ararat region. Well, that's where all the tablets break off and fracture. We never, ever find out what happens again. There's no tablets that exist beyond that point. From that point of Ziusudra, it's a mystery. We're going to fill that mystery in today. But before we fill that mystery in, we have to first understand this part.
Okay.
So now we're caught up, okay? Now, when Ziusudra lands in the Ararat Mountains, the Anuna gods descend down from above. And they say, how could any man survive the flood? And Enki says, I'm paraphrasing, I warned Ziusudra so he could preserve the seed of mankind. Now, I had originally thought the seed of mankind was genetics. It's knowledge, but a very specific kind of knowledge, okay? Because Ziusudra lived and preserved that knowledge, he was a great sage, he was rewarded with being the last and still last human ever given immortality. Okay? So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, in Atrahasis, it says that. So he's given immortality, but what does that mean? Well, you can't be immortal in the physical world. It's only mortals can exist here because everything must die. And so he's given immortality where? In the underworld. And that's the beginning of where we're about to go into a very interesting journey, and how a lot of people talk about how this conscious expansion and going down in lost civilizations is like a journey down the rabbit hole. And a lot of people say, well, it shouldn't be called that because you're really going to ascend up. And, as you look up, as you go into celestial understandings, this really is a rabbit hole, because we're going down into the underworld for a lot of this. And that's where all this begins. Now, the underworld obviously became what religions turned into hell. Blocking off anything, it turned into this evil place. None of that's true. None of that ever existed. And so let's get into what it actually is.
Okay.
So Zayasudra is given immortality in the underworld, in his abode. We know that. It states it. And Gilgamesh then knows about Zayasudra, that Zayasudra was given immortality. He knew about that. That knowledge was carried down. He just was aware of it, right? So he goes on a journey. Now I'm coming back where we started. He goes on a journey to go to see Zayasudra in the underworld. How did he get there? Very mysterious. But there's a famous scene in the tablets. You know the famous scene with Sharon the boatman. Remember, with the two gold eyes and the two gold coins on the eyes, and you ferry him across? Remember the ferryman? Sharon from ancient Greek mythology?
Oh, yeah.
That's based on this. Mm-hmm. That came from this story. So imagine Gilgamesh gets into the underworld, and we'll get into that as we go along, and he's ferried across. That's what the tablets talk about. He's ferried by Sharon across the abyss into the underworld.
Okay.
Wild to think about. He gets there and he meets up with Zayasudra. And then this is where we're continuing now, right? And he says, and look at some of the really key parts here. He reaches Zayasudra in his abode, see? Mm-hmm. And he says here, Zayasudra's talking to Gilgamesh.
Okay.
He says, you brought the land, the Mies, M-E-S.
You brought to the land the Mies of Sumer.
That were forgotten forever. Okay, so first part there. Sumerian's not part of the same time period. You see that? Look at how he references Sumer. He says that we're forgotten forever. He's talking about a huge amount of time that has gone by between these events, okay? And we know that because in the Epic of Gilgamesh, he says that he was once from a city called Shuruppak that was long before Gilgamesh. Mm-hmm. So we know that Sumerians, and Zayasudra, it's from a completely different time period than Gilgamesh.
Right.
I really want to establish that. It's very important we understand that. Now, I became extremely interested in this concept of Mies.
Is it knowledge? The knowledge of Sumer?
Well, basically, it's knowledge, but it's a type of knowledge.
Okay.
That's where this rabbit hole is going to go. Now, as I'm studying that, and I'm writing the book, the missing key, and we're doing the documentary, and we're writing in some narration, we're including it, but we don't know what it is. I didn't know what it was. I knew it was knowledge, but what kind of knowledge?
What's the language?
Well, it's Sumerian, but it's Neo-Akkadian, meaning that I believe that the story was actually first written down by Gilgamesh, not before.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by that. Now, Samuel and Noah Kramer did his best to translate this, but I don't think he got commandments and rights correctly. In fact, I know he didn't. Instead of commandments and rights, they're more like divine statutes of the universe. Okay, and now this is where we're going to prove it. Okay?
Okay.
Now, here is the only other tablet of all there's 100,000 cuneiform tablets, Danny. Hundreds of them haven't even been translated.
Wow.
But of the known tablets, only 2 mention the Mies. Well, that survived, right? There's a lot of these things get destroyed. We're talking about huge time periods. You're lucky if things got preserved.
How the hell does anyone translate that?
What
even is that?
Well, it's cuneiform writing, or they're wedges in clay. And essentially, once you can crack the code, you can understand it. And what we're looking at right now is what's called Enki in the World Order tablets.
It looks like old leathery elephant skin or something. It doesn't even look like anything.
That's because it's thousands of years old.
Right. I'm just saying, good Lord, to be able to translate actual English out of that is bonkers.
So Danny, on the left side, take a look at what it says. It says, it's talking about Inanna and Enki.
Yeah.
Inanna is a goddess of the Anunnaki Anuna.
Right.
So she's talking about visiting. She goes to visit Enki in the Abzu. What's the Abzu? The temple to the underworld. Enki is a god to the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she goes to see him, and she says it describes how she knows the me. Now it's me's in English, but me in Sumer. But we can't say me because it doesn't really work as we're talking. So what they did is they translated to say me's, but they're the same thing. Okay. So it says, she knows the me's, the holy laws of heaven and earth. So that's not quite the same as commandments and rights, is it? Which is how we know, unfortunately, Samuel Noah Kramer mistranslated that part.
Commandments and rights or holy laws.
Well,
of heaven and
because
earth.
he's looking at it from kingship, from an existing structures of kings. That's why he's doing.
Sure.
It's just based on an existing understanding.
I get it.
Yeah. So this is where this all really began. What are the me's?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is exactly what this lost civilization encoded into all these temples around the world, all these symbols that we've been following, which is what I cracked and found, and which is what we're about to give back humanity. Something that has not been known about in this kind of capacity in potentially centuries, if not longer, maybe millennia.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So
Show me.
we begin here. Right? You've seen these giant T's. By the way, that T, that's from Şavuz Tepe in eastern Turkey, near the Mount Ararat region.
Mm-hmm.
And that weighs around 7 tons.
That little thing?
That is not so little. That is made, first of all, it's made out of basalt.
Okay.
It's a volcanic stone. Remember, all stones aren't created equal.
No,
Some
I know,
stones
yeah.
are very soft. Some stones are very hard. And to manipulate them and work with them really matters depending on that. Because if you don't have tools capable of that are harder than what you're working with, you're not going to be able to do anything with them.
Right.
Which is why Iron Age and Bronze Age tools could never have created these things. Now, this is the first motif I want everyone to pay attention to. I did not know what it was at first. I didn't understand. Now, Danny, do you see the center of that T? You see how my hands on the left picture, do you see how my hands are on either side, but there's a central square? You see
Yes.
that? That top part, the line from left to right, is exactly 12 inches. It's the first foot. We're talking about a mathematical...
On the inside.
Yes. And Robert Grant was there filming with me, and we were measuring that. And with also Dr. Robert Schock, we were measuring that, and we were like, whoa. Here we have the foot, one of the most important early measurements in mathematics.
Okay.
Now, the reason I say that is that I didn't know what these were. We're following these, and it's a T, okay? Mm-hmm. It's a T, but what is the purpose of a T have with all around the world? Well, that is where we really start to unfold. Now, if you look carefully, you'll notice the T's repeat themselves all over this in the center and around the gods. And then you get introduced to these other symbols. We talked about some of these before. The step pyramid, the doorways, okay?
Oh, that's wild. Those T's are all in the background.
But what I didn't understand is what they all mean, Danny. Mm-hmm. Okay, so these sites around Eastern Turkey have these mysterious, enigmatic ruins, these highly sophisticated andesite and basalt places that archaeologists today are considering Urartian from 2,800 years ago. But the Urartians were an Iron Age primitive culture that we know their adobe mud brick is built on top. Mm-hmm. So they adopted these sites and built castles on them. So they called them things like Kalesi. So Kalesi means castle or fortress.
Right.
But that's not at all what their original purpose was. So this just gives you a really good snapshot example as we're talking about this, is that I started to notice, and that's why we did the documentary, is that the T's from Şavuz Tepe look really similar to the same motifs from Pumapunku in Bolivia across the world. The basalt stone, perfectly square stone blocks look really similar to Bolivia too. And then Kef Kalesi, the bas-relief, the step pyramid, the 3-level step pyramid design, okay? And the 3 doorways, you start to see it mirrored around the world. But these cultures are not supposed to have any contact. Not only that, but what they're building into is not adobe mud brick or anything primitive. It's some of the hardest stone in the world.
What stone are these? What are these
So
stones?
that's what's wild, is that every stone you see is either basalt or andesite in most cases. And give you an example of how hard that is to work with. It's what you have what's called the Mohs hardness scale.
Yeah,
So you take you
right.
got 0, right? Like
Diamonds at the
like
top.
mica. Yeah, diamonds is 10, right?
Right.
Well, these stones would be like 7, 8, or 9.
Wow.
Very, very, very hard.
Yeah, maybe they had to be hard, right? I mean, this certainly is not the easiest way to do this, right? So like why were they choosing the hardest stones?
Well, not only will it last the test of time, but they have piezoelectric mineral properties we're going to get into.
Right.
Okay.
Were they doing some Minecraft shit? You know how you build the portals in Minecraft with the obsidian?
Wait till you see where we're about to go on this, okay?
I knew it. I love this.
And you start to realize that it's more like an ancient technology. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm just giving an example of how far away these locations are across the world.
Right.
They're not supposed to be connected in any way.
Is there anything in North America?
Well, and everybody keeps asking me this. Let's answer this because it's like never-ending patriotism questions because they want to know what's there, right? I get it. North America was a very inhospitable place. I'll say specifically the United States. Mexico wasn't. Mexico, Central America down to South America was a totally different ballgame. But the United States in particular, Canada, where everybody asks about, was so inhospitable
North America.
because of the glaciation during the last ice age that area was, in some places, like for instance, up in northern Montana where people think there's a wall, there probably wasn't even life living there during the ice age because we're talking about ice caps that are miles thick, that are what are we call they're moving forward and backwards based on slight thaws and freeze. And so if you're in a place that has that ice cap going back over you, it's grinding everything down to nothing beneath you. No trees can really live. That's why when people bring this up about the United States, there are no ancient, highly advanced megaliths, but that doesn't mean there's no evidence of what we're looking for.
So most of these sites are in Turkey, correct?
Most of them are in South America, Turkey, Egypt, some places in Southeast Asia, and some other places like
what
Baalbek,
latitude
Lebanon.
does Turkey match up with in North America?
It's all built on this 30th to 40th latitude parallel.
Okay.
It's 30 to 40th parallel, depending on where you are.
Where does that run through in the U.S.?
Well, that's going to be south. I mean, but keep in mind our
Can
climate.
you find it, Steve?
Our climate is not the same here it is in those parts of the world. You have what's called the Gulf Current off of the Atlantic that creates huge warming environments in a lot of Europe and in parts of Western Asia. So it's not, the latitude doesn't necessarily always.
The latitude doesn't matter?
Doesn't always work out that way because, for instance, the climate of like London, right?
I've never been to London.
Well, it's just rainy and mild.
Right.
Whereas that's way further north than New York City. And yet New York City or Boston or wherever gets snow every year, right? It has to do with climatic effects. But the reason I'm saying this is that there are pieces of evidence in the Southwest United States that we're going to get into.
Steve, what did you search? What latitude does the U.S. run into?
Yeah, I thought that's what you said.
No, I was saying what latitude is Turkey? Is Turkey on? Like, and if you ran that line straight through the U.S., what U.S. states are on the same latitude as Turkey?
It doesn't work that way because of glaciation.
Right.
As I was saying, the
I'm just
climate.
curious. I'm just curious to see. Can you pull up an image or something?
The ice caps in Europe and Asia were very different than they were in North America. The Laurentian ice cap in North America was like the largest on Earth besides Antarctica.
I see.
Okay, so it just became a very inhospitable place.
But if you were to draw a line around the globe, it would probably run into like New Jersey or something.
Yes. And unfortunately, the U.S. was just not a very hospitable place during that time period to build civilizations, and they just didn't because of that.
Right. How old were those white sands footprints that we found?
We can talk about that. So
I don't want to derail you.
No, I mean, it's good that we point this out because we're told that we'll go back to this map because this highlights it really well. Okay. We're told that humans first entered the Americas by the Bering Strait during the last ice age, right? And that's how they got here. Well, the problem is that white sands, New Mexico just occurred within the last couple of years.
Right.
White sands, New Mexico are these footprints that have been preserved from Homo sapiens sapiens that were in North America more than double the age that we're told. So we're told that they got here around 12,000 years ago or so, 12, 16,000 years ago. the White Sands footprints are 26 to 28,000 years old, confirmed. Confirmed.
Right.
So not only is that double the age now that people are here, but it basically completely takes the timeline and says, oops, what about all this other stuff? Right. And we're going to add a lot more to that. And you brought up the United States. And again, I want to just bring up that as we're going to go through this, there are sites in the Southwest, like the Three Rivers Petroglyph site, that have this code embedded in their petroglyphs, meaning that there were continuations of this knowledge far later on into Hopi and Pueblo nations.
Okay.
So those are what people are asking about Chaco Canyon that has T's in some of the doors. Yes. There was a continuation of some of this knowledge into the Southwest United States, and it survived for a little while before.
Interesting.
Yes, but that's at the end.
Okay.
Let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah, make sure we talk about the Chaco Canyon stuff. I want to see that.
First thing I notice is, look, you have the 3-step pyramid with the doorway in Ollantaytambo in Peru across the world. The left side broke off. Why? How is that possible? They're mimicking the same things. They're not supposed to have any contact. And then same thing, Ollantaytambo, this is called the Spring of the Nusta. You get the same 3-level step pyramid with the 3 levels inside and a spring, not only a spring. Literally, Ollantaytambo is built because of this spring. So if you go there, the spring flows, they actually designed it to flow right through the center of their site. And they redirected the flow. How wild is this? They redirected the flow to then have it flow over sacred things that they designed.
Yeah.
So it never originally flowed over that rock. They designed that symbol, and then why do they flow the water over it? Because the symbol itself has a direct representation, meaning that has to do with balance, harmony, water, like what the ancients believed as well.
Right.
So that was why they essentially encoded that in that. Right. So here we have again the most important symbol in South America, the Chicana. Well, what are the chances that Chicana is the same symbol as the step pyramid in Turkey? You're looking at these motifs and symbols that are carrying all around the world. But what does it mean? What is all this?
You can't date this, right? Because it's
Well,
stone. There's no way to
we
date
can't
it.
date stone, but you can date alignments to things, and we're going to get to that.
Okay.
So here I was, and right now we're caught up to where we were last time.
Right.
So
okay.
here we see these symbols are all around the world. They're in 3 continents.
Right.
Right? That's not supposed to exist. They're in highly advanced stonework. They're next to beautiful masonry that is of just amazement and in awe. We go to a place like Saskatchewan. Have you ever been there? And you look at the huge pillow-like stones. You've seen them on video, right?
Oh, of course.
And you're like, how did they make that? Well, that's where we were last show. We're sitting there, we're trying to figure out what all these things mean, but we can at least say, well, it's part of a lost time period of human history. But that's all we had then. That's all we had to go by. Now let's go forward several months. I'm in my northern Great Lakes cabin on a lake in the middle of nowhere. It's snowing outside. In a blizzard, yeah. And it is, it's November. And I am looking at the snow, looking outside. And I'm just kind of, enjoying my day. That picture is sitting in my living room. I bought that photograph. Are you ready to go down a wild journey here, Danny?
Let's do it, bro.
I bought that picture 8 years ago at a yard sale for like $4. Okay, it was nothing special. It's a generic image that looks like the Sphinx. I had it. You look at videos. It's funny, right? You go to my YouTube. You go back like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You'll see this picture behind me all the time, just sitting there. I've looked at it hundreds of times. It's so funny how things work in life, and how there seems to be this hidden hand that we don't understand. I'll just say that. The chances of this are nearly an impossibility. I'm standing there and I had this really bizarre moment. Really weird. This voice comes in, and I'm not crazy. It says, look at the picture. And I actually initially was like, I've looked at that picture enough times, and I sat down on the couch, totally disregarded it. Same thing happened again. It said, look at the picture. And again, it's like this direct thing. It was really strange, but I'm no mystery to the metaphysical realms of reality. So I was like, okay. I got up and I looked at it. I literally looked at this thing hundreds of times. It was like, really? That was my feeling. It was like, really? I look at it and I was like, wait a minute. And it was like something formed in front of me that I'd never seen. And it's really strange how that works. There's this psychological term called the invisible gorilla, where if you are not looking for something, you won't see it. And that's the idea, is that there can be a giant gorilla sitting in a room.
Sure.
And you won't even see it because you're not looking for it. Well, that very same thing happened here. So I'm looking at this picture and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Is that an inverted 3-level step pyramid with the right side broken off on the Giza Plateau? So before I got too excited, because it could just be a coincidence or whatever it is, I start trying to go find other pictures. I'm like, of course, there's got to be like a ton of pictures of this everywhere on the internet, right?
Sure.
Giza Plateau, most visited archaeological area in the world, right? It's most studied archaeological area on Earth. Mm-hmm. Can't find a single image anywhere on the internet, including images, reverse searches with AI, anything.
Right.
Nothing.
Interesting.
I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? Do a little research, find out it's in one of the only off-limits private areas on the entire Giza Plateau.
This picture.
It's called this, where it was taken.
Right.
It's called the Sphinx Temple. And so, meaning that if Danny Jones goes on a trip to Egypt, you can't get in here.
To where this photo was taken.
Gated, it's gagged, it's large gates in front of the entrances, okay? Mm-hmm. You can only get in if you have private access. So you have to actually like apply for permits or have a guide that has access to it that has permission. Mm-hmm. So we are getting permission to film here. And I'll get to that as we go. But so the first thing I do is I'm realizing, so this is a really rare picture.
Yeah.
Where this is taken. And then I contacted Dr. Robert Schoch.
Why would they make this off limits to the public?
Good question. It's the only thing off limits because the nearby Valley Temple that's associated with it is not off limits.
They don't. What is there? Do they have a public excuse that's known?
They don't say anything.
They don't say anything.
No. And so isn't it interesting that the Rosetta Stone that may have unlocked everything is in the one off limits private area in the Giza Plateau? Coincidence, Danny?
So what did you do?
Okay,
did you try to get in there?
Well, the story is just beginning.
Okay.
So that's not enough to prove anything.
Right.
No, so I contacted Dr. Robert Schoch, who is the expert who has studied the Sphinx Temple more than anyone else pretty much in history. Mm-hmm. And he's been there with another Egyptologist named Mohammed Ibrahim numerous times. And much respect to those two gentlemen, but the same principle as the invisible gorilla. If you're not looking for something, you don't see it.
Right.
They didn't see it. Nobody saw it. It's I don't know if you could see it. It's weird to say that, but I don't know how I never saw it either. I guess that is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
So I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's cool, but I need a lot more evidence than that before I can prove that's an inverted step pyramid.
It just looks like you could say it's an inverted step pyramid, or you could say it's just
exactly.
a staircase.
It's not nearly enough to prove anything.
Exactly.
But it's what's called a cipher stone, meaning that it's pointing to something much larger. And that's where all this unlocked. So I said to myself, okay, Danny, I pulled up the temple layout for the Sphinx Temple and the Valley Temple, and I almost had a heart attack. There embedded in the entire design of the temple itself was the same 3-level step pyramid, both above and below, and the T's inside.
Whoa. So the one on the right is the
Sphinx Temple,
pyramid.
and then on the left is a gigantic T in the Valley Temple. Do you see that?
Yep.
So the symbols that have been following around the world, the T, the step pyramid, both inverted and non-inverted, because they combine to create both.
Right.
And then the other symbol, which is the 3 doors, which isn't in this, but it's in the other ones.
Are these visible from the air?
Yes. So nobody's ever looked at that.
There's no photos
Apparently,
of it?
nobody's ever looked at the temple site layouts and noticed this. So,
but can we find images of this on like Google Earth and see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just know, but it's the invisible gorilla. If you're not looking for it, why nobody's looking for a global code?
I really want to see what this looks like from the air.
Well, so this is just beginning, Danny. Buckle up. Okay, it's been a wild ride.
My seatbelt is off,
Honestly,
and I'm ready to go right through the windshield.
November on to now has been like the most exciting time of my life for these discoveries. So I call Dr. Robert Schoch. I'm like, Robert, you've got to see this. And I sent him an email on all this stuff. And I am anticipating getting some pushback because Robert is a top, academic. He does not jump on board unless something is absolutely 100%. Okay. And I respect him for that deeply, which is why I wanted, if anyone is going to give me the green light, Danny, it's going to be Robert. because he's one of the most famous geologists in the world. He's arguably one of the most studied of ancient lost civilizations of anybody. So, and he's on my team, and we've gone all over the world filming, and we have, a great relationship. So there you go. They're right there. You can see them. People didn't know what they're looking for.
Can you zoom in?
Now, a lot of these are super eroded. So keep in mind, Danny, when they're making these when they're first going into these sites long time ago.
And this is not straight down. This is at a slight angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but keep in mind when they're making these temple layouts, they're doing them when they first find the temples. So the first protocol you do, Danny, when you find an ancient site, you have to map it out, meaning that you have to design what the temple layout looks like. And so these all come from the original archaeologists that mapped out what the temple layouts looked like.
Steve, so you can find a better image. I would just go to Google Images and type in aerial photo of the Sphinx temple.
Get a drone shot. That's going to be better off for you. Yeah. So
You'll find something
we're
good.
going to be doing drone shots of that. So I email him this, Dr. Robert Schock, and he's been all over the world to see these symbols. He knows what we're looking for, right? But he's skeptical, which he should be. He's a scientist. And I was expecting pushback. Instead, I get an email that says, by the way, Matt, can you put that back up really quick? He says, by the way, Matt, I was looking in the second pyramid mortuary temple, and I found that it looks like the same symbols are repeating there too. So
The second pyramid?
So-
the Khafre pyramid?
it's Khafre's pyramid, which is
The middle pyramid.
He's not really the one who built it. Yeah, the second pyramid. Imagine now the code is now including the Great Pyramids of Giza. So the first thing he identified is that on the right side is Khafre's mortuary temple. Now you can see in the center of the T's in the layout up in the square, and then the step pyramid is in the circle, right? Now the first thing I did immediately is I run.
Where did you
not
get
really
these
run,
diagrams?
but you can just get them online. They're easy. And this is part of what I'm terming is called citizen archaeology. I'm starting a movement because people are finding this stuff now.
So this diagram on the right, this is accepted that this is what it looks like inside the Khafre pyramid?
No, these are the official diagrams. I'm not using some fringe diagram that no one accepts.
Wow.
Everything that I'm using are official archaeological, the temple layout designs. Okay. So
I've just never seen it before.
Well, no, because nobody's looking at temple layouts.
Right.
So the first thing I do is go to Khufu, the Great Pyramid. Same thing embedded in that. And then I go to Menkare's pyramid in the mortuary temple. Remember, these are the mortuary temples are basically leading into the pyramids. Same thing. All three of the Great Pyramids, same code embedded in them.
God damn, the one on the left looks like a computer chip or something.
Well, that's the idea is a lot of people have come back and you can actually see T's up in that. Look in the top left. If you look at the negative space, there's T's. It's all over the place if you know what you're looking for. And a lot of people have commented, Danny, and said what you just said. Is this some kind of an organic computer?
like a circuit board.
Yes. And there may be a lot of truth to that because this may be a type of technology. Okay. So I am trying to figure out what's going on here. I am wow. But what do we do now? Okay, what's one thing to have? We have the temple layouts, we have all these designs, but what now? Well, talking to Robert Schock, and he said this profound thing to me. He says, it's one thing to argue symbols in stones all around the world. And archaeologists could say maybe it's a coincidence. It's another thing to have those same symbols embedded in the entire temple layouts themselves. You can't argue those.
Right.
You can't argue temple layouts, okay? Now, before I tell you what they all mean, I want to show you a couple more examples, okay? Because it's important that people see this all. That's a good one. Yeah, you can see it on the right. I mean, a lot of this is super...
On the right, you can see the steps, yeah.
Yeah, it's super eroded, but you can still see it,
It is
right?
super eroded, yeah.
Okay, so just bear with me here, Danny. What we're going to do is we're going to go through, and I want to show you these all over the world first. I don't want to tell you what they mean yet. I know some people in the audience might be mad, but again, I want everyone to see how prolific this is. Once you start looking for it and identifying it, it is the signature of this civilization. If you can find it, it's only found in older structures, super advanced stonework,
Right.
and it's their signature. And we're going to get into what it all means, but it is incredible. It's there. It's truly what Graham Hancock said in his first book. It is the fingerprints of this lost civilization. So the first thing I do is I'm trying to go find other temple layouts, see if I can find it anywhere else, right? And this is where I told you the whole citizen archaeology thing started, because other people started finding stuff too based on this and telling me.
Wow.
And so there's a movement that's emerging right now where anybody that knows what they're looking for that's going to find these temple layouts is finding this code. It's exciting. Now, you ready? Temple of Horus in Egypt. We're not even on the Giza Plateau anymore. We're down hundreds of miles away, and check this out. You ready? On the right is the Sphinx and Valley Temple designs. Now, take a look. The Temple of Horus, you have T's, and every single entryway that gets smaller and smaller. That's very key to understand. It's what's called fractal geometry. Fractal geometry means something smaller that gets bigger, or the reverse. Now, the same thing is true with the other symbols. If you look at the combination of the T, the step pyramid, it's just repeating everywhere, all over the place. And I want to really emphasize, it's important to understand, they're now combining the T and the inverted pyramid together as a single symbol in some of these. And you're going to see that a lot more, especially in South America, as we go forward. Now, in the center of the star, where it says sanctuary, that design is nearly identical to what we call Susi temples in Turkey, in Ionis, at that design. So you're seeing the same motifs, the same architectural designs, the same knowledge embedded into these sites. But I'm just beginning, my friend. Let's keep going. Here we are in Tiwanaku, Bolivia. There you have the door. Now, this is all three symbols in one. You ready? They were brilliant. They said, okay, let's take the three most important symbols that represent the highest level knowledge we have. And let's not only embed them all around the world, but here in Tiwanaku, let's put them all together as one. Take a look. You have the door, you have the T, and the inverted step pyramid in one single symbol.
Right.
Okay, so that's an andesite stone. And I am so proud of my team for this. This is Dr. Robert Schock and Hans Orheim. Hans Orheim is an archaeologist. They both found this one. As I'm saying, this isn't just me. This is others that are involved in both my team and citizen archaeology people that are finding this now, and it's turning into a movement. It's like a revolution of ancient history. This is wild. At Tiwanaku, it's the entire temple layout design is the same symbol in the stone. Now, this is what I call like a home run. What I mean by that is this. There's a symbol we're looking for. You find it in the stone. Great, that's one. What you get for a home run, though, is when that exact same symbol is then also in the temple layout itself.
Right.
Now, the quote that Robert Schock said about you can't argue temple layouts, you can't say that's a coincidence anymore. Once the same symbols are embedded into the entire temple layouts, which is what the Sphinx and Valley Temple was, remember? You then have a problem. You then have something highly sophisticated, highly organized, that's being shared all around the world. Okay, and this is just, I have a lot more examples. How about Kailasa, India?
Oh, this one is like the most insane thing I've
This
ever
is
seen.
incredible. I mean, this is one of my favorite examples of all of them in the world. Kailasa,
How
for
in
those
the
who,
hell?
well, let's talk about Kailasa for a minute.
Yeah.
Kailasa is considered the largest monolithic temple carved out of a single rock in the world, meaning that this mountain, which is by the way, is basalt,
Right.
very similar to the stone we see everywhere else.
It's all negative relief, even
They
the whole thing.
carved the entire mountain into one single temple. Okay, it's one of the most advanced ancient sites in the world, arguably, hands down. Now, they say they know who built it, theoretically, but if you go look at the story, they don't really know who built it, and they don't really know when it was built because a lot of cultures have come later. Same thing in India. A lot of cultures have come later and adopted these sites, okay? Now, when I found this, it was like a heart attack. It was like a heart attack. Nobody's looking at temple layouts. That's what's happening right now. So let me give an example of what this is. In the very center of the entire temple, literally the focus of the temple itself. You see that? In the very heart of the temple is the exact same design as Tiwanaku. And I mean exact, I mean, look at that, Danny. Isn't that incredible? And I showed the temple layout above, and not only that, but the 3 stairs that lead to it are exactly 3. I say 3 because 3 is the number that repeats over and over again, and then you add 3 and 3 and you get 6, then you add again and you get 9, which we know Nikola Tesla and others have talked about the mystery number of the universe being 3, 6, and 9, right? Everything is encoded in that here.
I didn't know that's what he said. The mystery.
Well,
code of the universe.
it's one of those things where some people are going to call him are going to call me out on that quote. His official quote is that if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, it's through energy, vibration, frequency. But the quote about 3, 6, and 9,
right.
many people that have delved into his work believe he said that as well, because all his work talks about 3, 6, and 9.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So even though they can't 100% prove he said it, pretty much everybody knows he did say that.
Okay.
Okay. So there's a code embedded, Danny. It's all over the world, but it's in only these older advanced structures. And so when I saw all these, I'm linking it now back to the very beginning. Here we are at the very core of where we started. And this is a very important slide. It's what we call the proto-origin of these symbols. So when you have symbols over time, they become more advanced, like anything, right? So if Danny built a car, what's going to happen to that car after like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? It's going to become way more modified, right? Get better and more sophisticated. Exactly the same thing as these. These are what you're looking at are the proto-origins of where this civilization, I believe, began. And where is it? Lake Van in eastern Turkey, precisely where the stories of Zayasudra, where he ended, start. You see that? Mm-hmm. And so I want to go through this and just explain it really quick. That Susi temple design that I showed that was in the Temple of Horus and other places. But also look, if you look very carefully, it's hard to notice, but the 3-level step pyramids are also in the entrance, and then 2 T's that differ based on their sizes. And that's the fractal geometry. And then on the right is Shavuz Tepe, which is a site right next to Ionis. And as you can see, the T's then become giant monoliths. They actually create versions of them into monoliths, right? And then above to the top right is, of course, what's called the Kef Ba relief, and it came from another site right next to Ionis, and that's where you get all the rest of the symbols. So if you combine them all together, you get something incredible. You get a code. And that's why I called this the blueprint of lost civilization. It's their code. And I want to go over what all of this means and how I found it and how all this unfolded. I'm sitting there trying to understand this. How could these why would they encode these advanced symbols into everything? What are they doing? Why are they encoded T's and step pyramids and doorways? What is going on here, right? This is what broke all of this open. I was studying ancient Hermetic geometric designs. Hermeticism is an ancient secret society type of knowledge that existed, teachings long ago, and we'll get into more about that soon. And I found a word that unlocked everything. If that photograph was the catalyst to point it to me, this was the word itself was it unlocked every single meaning for it.
Cosmogram?
It was a word that has become nearly extinct in our world today. Very few people on Earth even spoke it any longer. It was used in only fringe papers, and anyone who wants to look it up, and please do.
Cosmogram?
Cosmogram itself is a word that I write in the book, The Missing Key. The word itself was on the very edge of oblivion. It was about to die. And if we lost this word, we may never have ever understood what these things are.
Google says a cosmogram is a diagram, map, or symbol representing a specific cultural, religious, or scientific worldview of the universe organization.
Yes. So what they're doing is they're encoding the structure. Remember this, Danny. They're encoding, go back to mine. They're encoding the structure of the universe into their temples.
Okay.
So when I found this and I said, oh my God, how could they have known the structure of the universe?
As above, so below.
Well, that's Hermeticism, and we'll get to that. That's where that comes from, is Hermeticism. Okay? So once I found this, everything unraveled. Everything. It was like a freight train once this happened, because it filled every single other thing in. They're all cosmograms. All of them are. Every single one of these symbols are cosmograms. Okay? And we'll get into what they all mean and how they're all related to this and how it all connects. So what they understood was that, and let me tell you how I found it though, is that in Egypt, they preserved their understandings of how the structure of the universe. The ancient Egyptians did a really good job with preserving that. And even though they may have been very bad with certain things, I'm talking about the dynastic Egyptians, Khufu, Khafre. I'm not talking about the people who built these structures originally.
Right.
Okay. The dynastic Egyptians did a lot of bad stuff, right? They recarved the Sphinx to be a pharaoh. We'll get into that. They did a lot of bad stuff. But the best thing they ever did,
Those naughty Egyptians.
the best thing they ever did was that they really did a great job carrying down traditions. Very, very happy they did that, because I was able to just go into ancient Egyptian understanding through the Book of the Dead and others. Well, what are the three structures of reality? What are they? Well, they understood that the universe was made up of only three pieces, and it's not quite as hard to understand as we think it is. They understood it as physical reality, like what we see around us, and two metaphysical realms of reality that support the manifestation of physical reality. The first realm is the celestial realm. Totally metaphysical, non-physical. Nothing's physical in these realms. Okay? You can't, it's not space. You don't fly into the celestial realms. I want to be really clear on that, because a lot of people confuse that. They think, oh, like the stars above us. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about realms of reality outside of our existence. Things we can only peer into through some kind of psychedelics or meditation practices or shamanic journeys. Okay. You see where I'm getting at, right? So they understood that
non-physical.
They understood the universe was only three pieces. So physical, celestial, and the underworld, or what the Egyptians called the duat.
Wouldn't the underworld be similar to the celestial world?
Well, they mirror each other. There's no separation between them. And we're going to get into the whole models.
So like heaven and hell, basically.
But it's not really hell.
Sure. It's just a...
In fact, the path of ascension seems to have as much importance, if not more, of going through down first before you go through up. And we'll show that in a minute. So, yeah, which is why it's really interesting how monotheistic religions literally blocked off what may be part of the path of ascension.
They did what?
Literally may have blocked off part of the path of ascension of humanity by doing that. Because the underworld is not what we think it is. It's where souls incarnate. It's where souls are judged. All these different things happen. It's also where life is. So hold on with me there for a minute.
Okay.
So they understood all this stuff, and then unfortunately they all were destroyed. They all were destroyed because they were following cycles. And they understood how to map the heavens, and they knew that everything followed cycles in the universe. So we're going to get into what all of those meanings mean in a second, but we got to start with dating, because everyone always yells at me on dating and says, what about the dating? How old is this? How can you prove it's dating?
Right.
So we're going to pause on what all the Cosmogram stuff is for a moment. Let's pause for a minute and let's do dating. Because the dating has a lot to do with that, because we have to understand when this civilization even existed before you can appreciate what they left behind. Okay? And so how do we date all this? Well, you can't date stone. So what do you do? Well, you can do some organic dating at Göbekli Tepe. Remember, they found some organic matter, and they already have the dating of that double the age of civilization.
Right.
But that wasn't really enough to crack anything, was it? Academics didn't find that compelling enough. So what do? Where do we go from here? Well, once we're able to separate out disasters in Earth's history, we can then try to match them up with stories and tablets that discuss those events, right? And there's actually a lot more correlation than some people might know in those stories. Like, for instance, how about the story of Zayasudra? What are we told about that? Well, it's a huge flood, just a flood. Unlike other disaster stories talked about with Atlantis and Plato and all those things, the one that Zayasudra is talking about didn't have fire or anything. The other ones did, but the one that they're talking about was just a flood. So the first thing to separate is that I do not believe that event is the same as the Younger Dryas at all. So meaning that when we talk about these catastrophes in history, most experts are going to lump them all into this Younger Dryas 12 to 13,000 period. What I'm saying is that that's not the first event. That's simply the last one. That's the one that wiped everyone out.
The most recent.
That's the one that destroyed the entire global culture. That's the one that wiped them out. That's the one that made them encode all this into their structures because they knew they were all going to die. How poetic and sad. They knew it because they tracked cycles, and they understood that cycles that follow these alignments, the influence of the sun, other things. And there's these catastrophic things that can happen to Earth that we have never experienced in modern human history, not even close.
Right.
And so how do we try to date this? Well, there's a very interesting study that came out over the last 10 years with these Kauri trees in New Zealand. So you see these trees up here? Mm-hmm. They find these giant extinct trees in New Zealand that have fallen into these pits and have been preserved because it's when they died. So they were able to take the tree rings and they were able to extract out the data from the tree rings and find out that 41,500 years ago was a devastating, devastating flood on Earth. At the same time, they find these lava fields in France called the La Champ lava fields. And these lava fields happen to have this really unique kind of bubbling lava that they can take the air pockets inside the lava and get a snapshot of what the Earth's climate was
Right.
like. So they're combining that with
Same way
these
they do
tree
with ice
rings.
cores.
Yeah, and they're taking these things. This is not me.
What about ice cores? Can they do that with ice cores?
Yes, ice cores too. So all three. So tree rings.
You can go back that far with ice cores?
Yes, Antarctica ice cores you can, not Greenland.
Okay.
So they're taking tree rings, they're taking those lava fields, they're taking these different events, and they're not saying lost civilization was destroyed then. They're saying this is the last confirmed geomagnetic excursion in Earth's history. So I think I killed that slide out of here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Geomagnetic excursion. What is that?
Just because there was a flood, they think there was a geomagnetic excursion?
No. They're not saying a flood. Scientists aren't saying there was a flood. They're saying there was a geomagnetic excursion. But when there's a geomagnetic excursion, there's a massive flood.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Sure.
Why? Because what happens is
And what was in the bubble? Sorry to interrupt. What was in the bubbles in the lava?
snapshots of the climate so they could match up with the Kauri trees and ice cores to pinpoint that 41,500 years ago, some absolutely horrible catastrophe occurred
Something
on Earth.
was going wrong.
Very badly.
Right.
So what they've determined is that for a 700-year period, the magnetic north wobbled all over like it's kind of doing now, but in an extreme way. It shifted so much that it caused the entire axis of the Earth to tilt and bulge a huge amount of water on one side of the planet.
Who's saying this?
Scientists. This is not for me at all.
In a separate lane from
So
the
all you have
ones-
to do is go look up what's called the Adams event or the La Champ event, the last geomagnetic excursion, and just go read about it. They don't think humans existed at this point, remember?
Right.
So they're not going to reference anything like that.
Okay, so what they're finding in the lava bubbles, the ice cores, and the tree rings is that something crazy happened, which confirmed the hypothesis of the I don't know what you would call the people who try to determine there was a geomagnetic event.
Scientists.
40,000. Well,
Yeah.
or what type of scientist that would be?
It would.
That would be probably a maybe a geologist. Maybe that would be a geologist.
Yeah, and a few other things too.
So
but yeah.
so there's already a theory with those folks that there was some sort of a geomagnetic event.
No, not a theory. Established. So
Okay.
if you can go look it up right now if you want, just to show him so he feels better.
I'm just trying to
Champ
understand
event.
it, that's all.
So last Champ event, if you just go type it up on Google,
Okay.
it'll say the last time that scientists have confirmed a geomagnetic
The
excursion.
Adams event.
Yeah.
Did polar drift cause climate change
There you go.
42,000 years ago?
So it's-
Earth's magnetic field is one of the most mysterious forces that shaped life on our planet. It's likely powered by solidification of Earth's iron core and appeared more than 3 billion years ago. Blah, blah, blah. Where's the get to the point? For some 42,000 years ago, Earth went through several centuries of dramatic climate change. Okay. And environmental chaos. The weather
Chaos.
patterns
Yeah.
went wild and shifted violently with cold snaps commonly spreading from the Arctic to North America, and the ozone layer was likely destroyed. And electrical storms created auroras, even in the tropics. Netherlands, Neanderthals, and some impressive representatives of megafauna went extinct. Strangely, amidst all the destruction, there was a boom of surviving Homo sapien cave art. Whoa.
Yeah.
What is a okay, so
Geomagnetic excursion means
Right.
that the magnetic poles move.
that's crazy. They could know that. They could know
From the record, from the tree rings, and from the lava fields, and from the ice cores. Yeah,
What I'm saying though is just because it was chaos, like how do they know it wasn't from something
so-
else? Like, wasn't from comets or wasn't from super volcanoes or?
It's because, well, they're not saying what caused it.
Right.
They're saying what happened. They're saying that the magnetic poles moved significantly to where it created chaos all over the earth, killing all these Kori trees.
I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying. I understand that they're using the chaos as the proxy to figure out something went wrong. But how are they using that? How does all of that equal poles shifting? Is what I'm saying.
Because they know that those effects can only happen. See, you're looking at this backwards. The magnetic poles are what determine everything. Everything physical in our reality comes out of an energetic reaction. Do you understand what that means? The Earth is a giant toroidal field of energy. So it goes like this: the energy comes out of Antarctica.
I know what you're
comes
saying.
Out of like it comes out and goes through the North Pole, and it's an energy flow. And there's magnetic North and South poles.
Right.
They're saying that this is the most significant excursion of that they've seen, bar none, in the last 42,000 years.
Okay.
And so what I'm saying is that when you then put this into the mix and you identify the older and younger Dryas events, but you separate them from the last Champ event, you then get a working timeline. You then start to get where you can piece some of these events together, because we know that the Saya Sutra event was not the same event that's described by Plato. They're not even close to
Right.
the same event described, right?
Right.
But what is Solon told in Egypt? Remember, he says
Yep.
So for those who don't know, Solon goes down to Egypt. He's the first Westerner to be in ancient Egypt at that time. He meets with two priests in Egypt at the Temple of Neith in Sais. Okay, one of them is named Sonchus, and the other one is named Xenophis of Heliopolis. Most people don't know that. So both of these individuals, they tell him this ancient history long before even the records that he knows about existed, in which they say, you Greeks remember one deluge, but there have been many, mostly of water and fire. Remember? So why would we think there's one event then? Right? So that's why I've been able to separate out the Zayasudra flood, the beginning, with the younger and older Dryas as being the end, and then we can start piecing together a timeline. Then we can start putting this all together, because that's not the only evidence we have to line these things up. I'm giving you the catastrophe evidence first as we start working through this.
Oh, interesting. Steve just answered my question. When lava cools and sediment settles, the minerals align with the magnetic field. Okay, that makes sense.
That lava field just
I
happened to
did
be
a poor job of asking my question. So sorry.
that lava field just happened to be the best representation
Right.
of that, of any of it in the world, and that's why they used it.
Okay.
So here is a graph that most people don't know about. These are Greenland ice cores, not Antarctica, because Greenland only goes back 20,000 years, because the Greenland ice cap is only 20,000 years old. So take a look at this. Look at where we are on the right side. They're talking about climate change, talking about how we're so warm and blah, blah, blah. No, we're not. No, we're not. And if anything, you look at disruptions over the last 10,000 years and they're minor. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Now look at 11,600 years ago to about 14,500 years ago. Insane. Like
Freezing.
we're talking about
That was your backyard a couple months ago.
basically. Yeah, but also warming temperatures too. It's not just cooling. Look at the warming on the front side. 14,500 years ago.
Oh,
That's why Edward Toll found weird alder trees growing up that were frozen with frozen green leaves up in Siberia because of that event. Now, that's the climatic way we can start creating our timeline. If you create a timeline, you have to have as much moving pieces of evidence possible to try to do that. That's just the beginning. So that's our climatic timeline. Now that climatic timeline fits very well with tablets though, and very well with stories of two primary events, right? Two events that basically were enough to destroy that entire chapter of our history.
The younger Dryas was 11,500, something like that.
I'll go back.
12,000 years ago, between 11 and 12,000 years ago, basically.
Yeah.
And what do you call the other event?
Well,
What was the 40,000 year event called?
It's either the last Champ or Adams event. Has two names.
Adams event.
Yeah.
So the Adams event was
41,500 to 42,000 years ago.
to 42,000 years
Yeah,
ago.
look at
from
that
now.
gap.
What's
Which is what I was going to get to, is that I believe that this civilization existed for over 20,000 years. Which is why they were able to master everything they were.
Wow.
Okay, so let's get into the dating to prove this, though.
Okay.
Take a look at these angles. Not everybody sees these angles of the Sphinx. There's a lot of really clever angles that don't really show you the truth of it, and this does.
Okay.
If you're a civilization creating a structure like this, and if anybody doesn't know, the Sphinx is a solid piece of bedrock, similar to Kailasa, where they just cut out the rock around it and then just forms it in the middle, right? It's not stones stacked together. It's a single piece of bedrock cut out.
Why do the paws look so perfect and the upper part looks
That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
And so around the enclosure is what is called the Sphinx enclosure. That's where Dr. Robert Schoch went in the 90s
Yep.
to show the water erosion, okay?
Yep.
So the first thing you notice is that if you're an ancient civilization creating a structure like that, why would you make the head so small?
Right. It
Doesn't make any sense. It looks
so
silly.
strange.
It looks ridiculous. That's because it was not a pharaoh. It was a lion. And we're going to get into the proof on how that was a lion. But I just wanted to show you the examples of how silly it looks from these angles, because not everybody sees these angles when they're looking at the Sphinx. And they really show you the disturbance. And you just brought it up. Look at the erosion and how affected the front body and the head have been compared to some other parts. Now, some other parts have been rebuilt a little bit. I do get that.
Yeah.
But look at the manipulation on the head especially. We're talking about something that was probably not quite double as big, but certainly quite a bit bigger than it is now. Now, why do we know it's a lion? Well, the lion is a motif that is shared by this lost civilization all over the world, everywhere. They considered a lion an archetypal guardian. We're going to get into guardians now. Guardians are what is shown as another, on all of these sites, guardians are playing this very big part because they understood that these realms of reality needed guardians to maintain them and balance them. And they considered Leo to be this celestial representation that also matched the most fierce, basically, predator we have here, a lion, the strongest, right? And so they used both as a means to create a type of guardian. Now, top of that image, if you look at the Kef Ba relief, I have a piece of it, he's standing on a lion. And what's interesting is that on Kailasa on the right, the lions are identical. I mean, not only is it a lion, but it has the same artwork on its legs and body and everything, right? And yet these are in two completely different parts of the world.
Right.
And so these aren't the only lions, though. The lion is all over the ancient world. And in this civilization, it's well accepted in most more studied higher level academics. For instance, Dr. Robert Schoch, John Anthony West, it's a lion. They are convinced without a doubt that it is a lion.
Doesn't the Sphinx face a specific constellation?
Well, that's what we're going to get into with dating. It faces Leo. That's the whole point of it being Leo, a lion.
Right.
Yes. So once they determine it's a lion, because ancient Egypt was obsessed with lions, you saw it all over it, and the lion is then it's a architectural guardian all over the world. Once you understand that, you then can take what we just mapped out with the catastrophes, and you can take celestial alignments, and we can get some dating. We can finally understand when all these things were dated, okay? Because of this. Now, I love this, and again, Dr. Robert Schoch and John Anthony West, the best examples of this, they would have this debate for years. And then, John Anthony West isn't with us anymore, and now Dr. Robert Schoch and I have this debate, just like they used to have. And it is this. Now that we can establish the Sphinx was a lion, I mean, that's pretty well established by most
Could you imagine
academics.
how fucking cool it would have looked before they...
So much better than a pharaoh,
ruined
right? So this is the big thing. It only faces Leo during certain time periods in history because of what's called the precession of the equinox.
Isn't it facing Leo now?
Not like this. No.
Okay.
So what it means is that the Earth spins on a slight kind of wobble. And the ancients understood that's how you track cycles. That's what they were tracking. That's what the zodiacs are, okay? It's why we're going into the age of Aquarius. We're leaving Pisces.
Right.
We're going into a new zodiacal age, which is why all this chaos is happening, because in between ages is when this always happens. So, Dr. Robert Schoch believes it's 12,000 years old. John Anthony West believes it's 38,000 years old, because those are the only two dates that the Sphinx can align with Leo.
Really?
Yes. Those are the only two because of the precession of the equinox. That means that the Earth is wobbling and it's facing different constellations for 2,100 years.
It's every how many years?
2,100 years is an age. You put it all together and you get the great year, which
Are you
is
sure?
16. Yes, it's what you get. It was called the great year.
I thought it was a different number. I thought it was like 242 or something.
2,100 years is an age. So it's right around 2,000 years, which is why you see some of the interesting things with like the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago with like the whole story with Jesus and everything. It's almost exactly 2,000 years ago. So these two dates, John Anthony West and Robert go back and forth, right? Well, why did they believe what they did? Well, John Anthony West did not believe that it would be possible for them to build these structures during 12,000 years ago. Why? Because it was the early of the end of the world.
Hold on, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm losing my mind right now.
Okay.
I swear I thought an age was 21 or 22.
21.
Great year.
That's the great year combined.
25/7 to 26.
Yeah.
Okay, I could have sworn you said 2100.
2,100 years, yeah.
No, this is saying 25,000 years.
Daniel, you're in the great year. So you got to combine 12 zodiacs together to get that.
Oh, that's a single precession.
So it means that when the Earth spins an entire precession, it takes 26,000 years. That makes sense?
Got it. Okay, so 12 2100 year cycles.
So they knew that, and they knew that when the Sphinx aligned with Leo, it had to be either 12,000 or 38,000 years ago because of the precession. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense.
Now, look back at this. How could they possibly have built the pyramids of Egypt during that? 12,000 years ago was chaos on the earth.
Yeah.
Chaos, right?
Right.
Which is why then we go back a previous age. 38,000 years ago. Well, this is where it gets really interesting. What was the date on the last Shump event?
40 something?
41,500 years ago. If Egypt was built 38,000 years ago, then it means it would have given the builders after Zayasudra nearly 3,000 years to reach it. So let's take into account for a minute. Let's try to put these into a timeline. Yes, you heard what I said. I believe Zayasudra was over 42,000 years ago. That the original first cities on Earth
was
we don't even know how old they were. We only know when they were destroyed. So I can't tell you when they originally built. Maybe 45,000 years ago. I don't know though.
Right. So what you're saying is, I mean, it's. I don't think anyone thinks that they would have been built during the Younger Dryas.
No,
right?
well,
they claim the Younger Dryas is what ended the civilization that built it.
No, Dr. Robert Schoch does believe that it was built then.
In the middle of the Younger Dryas?
He has his reasoning, and I respect him as an academic for that. Yes. Maybe that's also because as a top level academic, maybe it's a little easier to start with 12,000 rather than 38.
Right. Okay.
Baby steps, bud. Remember that.
No.
Okay?
Well, maybe it was built like right before the catastrophe happened.
Well, the problem is
you wouldn't fucking build a pyramid in the middle of a catastrophe.
There is no right before. The Younger Dryas combines with the Older Dryas. It's like a 2,000 year period of disaster on the Earth.
Right.
So there is no like building it right before because
then the younger and the older.
Because then you're not in 12,000 years ago anymore, and it wouldn't have lined up. Do you see that? They do everything perfectly. They don't make any mistakes. The Great Pyramid is like a perfect half ratio of the Earth, related to the Earth, Sun, and Moon relationship.
Yep. So in that period, what is that, 1,000 year roughly period?
Well, if you add the older and the younger, it's even longer.
Okay, but during that crazy climate drop, right there, when it's chaos on Earth, during that period is when the Sphinx was aligned with Leo.
You're saying 12,000 years ago or before?
12,000 years during the Younger Dryas. 12
it was. But there's different, it's aligns during different ages. And so
I get
12 was one of them.
It was the last time.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
got it.
Yes. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking climatic data, ancient tablets, all the stories we can from Solon and everything we have, right? And we're then combining it with precession and with these alignments, and that's how we're getting the dating. So let me lay this out there.
I completely understand what you're saying now.
Yeah, so I believe that Zayasudra's flood, the flood that destroyed Shuruppak from the very beginning, was 41,500 years ago or 42,000 years ago. It was right in that window. And that, think about how much time that would give him. Then if Egypt is 38,000 years old and the same symbols and builders are involved, it would give them 3,000 years to get there. That's plenty of time.
Oh yeah, totally.
Plenty. I mean, look at what we've done in the last 700 years since horse and buggy, right? So the timeline starts to match really well. You see that? All of a sudden, truth falls into this perfect place because truth is truth. Once you find something that matches where it's supposed to, it's like, oh, that makes complete sense. Because how else would you then put this? Where else would you put it? We now can place each of these events during sequences of not only precession, but also climatic events that match destruction mentioned in the stories. All of it comes together to say, look, we have an over 20,000 year period of human history in which we became the greatest masters we've ever been. And then we were all destroyed. But before they were destroyed, they left all of their knowledge for us. All of it.
And they knew they were going to be destroyed.
And they knew they were all going to die.
And the people that were leaving this knowledge, they were built. So you think the pyramids and the Sphinx were built post the Adams event?
No, all that. Okay, so let me lay this out there. This is definitely important. I'm glad you brought that up. Imagine there was a previous civilization age that existed on Earth. It was the Sumerians, and that's the only one. There might not have been any other Homo sapiens civilizations anywhere. It may have just been like more Neanderthal hunter-gatherers, right? Let's say something started there very special, like it states, just like the tablet says it does, where something very special emerges in that region with Eridu to Shuruppak. Now, that was the first beginnings of everything, but they were destroyed, right? And so what happens? Well, you learn that Zayasutra landed up there, and then there's this mystery. Well, Zayasutra was rewarded for maintaining all of the knowledge of mankind. That's what it's told about in the tablets. So why would we not think that the Golden Age came out of that? The reason we say that is that the tablets, before they break off and we never hear anything again, the last thing they say is that they reward Zayasutra and they give him immortality, and they also decide to basically like give humanity another chance. Okay. Now, so what does that mean? It means that I believe that the greatest golden age that ever existed in our history began, I'm not going to say 41,500 because they need some time after a disaster. Let's give them 500 years, okay? Let's just give them 500 years. Let's call it 40,000 to make it easy, okay? 40,000 years ago, the greatest golden age that's ever emerged in our history began. Began in Vaughn, Ionis, then spreads around the world, cultivates itself to the greatest expression of that of all in Egypt. The largest versions of it, but the same symbols, right? And so Egypt is like the perfection of this global civilization there. Okay. Now,
so post Adams event.
Yeah. So then they build it all 38,000 years ago, and then everything in between we don't really know. I can't tell you when Tiwanaku's built. I can't tell you when some of these other places in other Egypt was built because we don't have the celestial alignments. But we can know that they're in that period somewhere. Okay. Somewhere in there, right? Now, Posnansky, who was a great scientist, Posnansky was the first one to study Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia. And he, way before anybody else, believed that it was like 16,000 years old. So he was way ahead of the game back then, okay? So we're now catching up to where we were. Now, we just laid out timelines, right? Timelines and the code around the world. Now, let's break it down. What does it all mean? What is all this knowledge? If they left the greatest knowledge of the universe, what is it? Well, I think the greatest question we can have here that we need to ask ourselves is, who were we, though? Because in order for us to understand where we're going, we have to first understand who we were once, where we were, right? Where we've been. So, Chavus Tepe, there's your three inserts going right in. Highly advanced stonework, okay? Now,
where's this?
That's Chavus Tepe around Ionis. That's the Van region of Turkey. Okay. Look at the stonework. It's unbelievable, right? It's just incredible. That's the stonework of a lost civilization. For instance, what I mean by that is that the Urartian culture, who had to prop up underneath it because it was all broken, that's why there's limestone underneath it. Those stones, these types of stones all around the world were essentially very little manipulated ever again. I say little because they were slightly manipulated. And one of the things they did is that the Urartians carved cuneiform into these blocks to claim ownership for them. That's why archaeologists believe that the Urartians built these sites, because they tried to claim ownership. Well, look at what the dynastic Egyptians did.
Right.
They recarved the whole head into a pharaoh. Talk about some confusion. So look, obviously I deeply revere ancient cultures, but some of them did bad stuff. We have to just accept the fact that some of them tried to pretend they built things they didn't. They tried to reshape things. They, different things like that. Okay, so we have to wrap our heads around that mindset. Now, let's get into the whole thing. These motifs around the world. The first thing is 3 doors. Now, you're going to see this in some pretty wild places as we go forward, like Da Vinci. We'll get into that as we go. But on the left is what's called Napa Iglesia. Now that is in Peru. And you see the same step pyramids, which the Spanish blew up the top there. There would have been a 3rd level, but they put dynamite into a hole there and blew it up when they conquered this area,
that's nice.
which was really nice of them to do that.
Yeah, very nice.
I've been to this site multiple times, and it is one of the most sacred, magical places I've ever been in my life. When you sit in that doorway, Danny, you feel something, okay? This is an ancient technology. And I'm going to get into that as we go along. But here's the motif. We're spreading around the world. Now, here is Tiwanaku. This is the famous Gate of the Sun, but it's the backside, which most people don't even look at. Now, these 3 doors, what do they mean? We were talking about the ancient Egyptian understandings of what the universe, the 3 aspects of the universe. The 3 aspects that's not just shared by Egypt, but basically the entire ancient world believed the exact same thing. They understood that. They didn't look at the universe in these separate pieces. They looked at it all as part of a whole, as part of a singular thing. And they understood that the middle door is always the largest because physical reality is what matters most. Basically, it's like being in the moment in physical reality, and that the other 2 doors manifest physical reality. Now, this understanding is very important because it then allows us to not only back engineer understandings, but even technologies. If we can crack their code, we can essentially rebuild their world. Now, how do I know that these doors represent this? Well, from this, 2 key pieces of evidence. Again, back to the Kef bas-relief. Everything is a fractal microcosm macrocosm relationship, meaning that they understood that the small has to mirror the large, and that everything has to be a mirror of left and right, above and below, like right? So when you look at this, imagine the tree in the center is the middle door, physical reality with the tree of life.
Okay.
Now, the tree of life doesn't just represent a tree, it also represents consciousness. They understood that the ascension process of humanity is very much the same process of what's unfolding in the entire universe. They did not see humanity separate from the cosmos. And that's a really important thing that we're going to get into as we go along. So imagine these are the doors. And the way we figure out what the left door and the right door is based on this. But it's not just this. So for instance, the god on the left is Nergal, god of the underworld, and we know that. Not only that, but ancient Egyptians understood that west is death and right is east for life, because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and they considered it like a relationship of death and life, like the sun rebirth every day. So that's how we know which of these doors represents which thing. So once I was able to do that, it was basically like back engineering the rest of it. All the rest of the things just unfolded like dominoes. It was beautiful. But I had to first get those understandings, okay? Now, each of these gods, now the god on the left, archaeologists are going to go, wait a minute, Matt, that's Toshiba or Toshub. And I'm going, sorry, it's misidentified. This is an underworld god, not a celestial god. That's why I've identified it as being the counterpart, the equivalent of Nergal in the underworld. He's an underworld god. Now, if you imagine, Danny, can you have life without death? No, right? Because everything's balanced.
Yep.
So everything is part of a delicate balance that exists, meaning that Nergal's responsibilities as a god of death and war, his counterpoint, they always have to have a balancer. So meaning in the underworld, there is a negative god.
Yeah, I get it.
But there's also a positive god. That's who Enki is. Okay. Now, the same thing is true above us. Do you know who the negative god above us is?
The negative god above us?
The god who plays a negative role.
Zeus?
Yes. His name was Enlil. You got it. Zeus is his later name and his Greek name. So Zeus or Enlil, it means Lord of the Air.
Okay.
Right? So his job, his role, responsibility, he was the one who determined to wipe out humanity, to destroy everyone.
Right.
Because he's playing the negative role.
Prometheus tried to save us.
And his counter in the upper celestials is Marduk. So there's just
Marduk is Prometheus?
Well, it depends on how you want to label those, but they're all playing positive and negative roles. You see that?
Yeah.
Above and below, and then physical reality is manifested right in the center. So once you understand that, you then get to extrapolate all over the world, meaning that every single thing had a relationship based on that understanding. Everything did. And the most beautiful thing to me about the realms of reality is these flowers. I would consider this the most beautiful connection. So in Vaughn, the 3 sites we just talked about.
Right.
So, the underwater ruins is right there in the same area, right? I dove down there last year for the documentary.
Yep.
So 3 sites, top right, Ionis, bottom right is Kef, the one on the left is the underwater ruins. Now, the underwater ruins sits underwater, way down below. Kef, Kailasa, where that bas relief came from, sits on a mountain right above it. And then Ionis sits on a beautiful little peak to the right of it. Now, what is so fascinating is that every realm of reality has its own flower that represents it. So, for instance, we'll start on the bottom right. That flower on the bas relief, do you see it? They're tetrahedrons that make a flower. Do you see that? Because it represents physical reality. Tetrahedrons represent manifestation of physical reality through sacred geometry.
Yeah.
So
how is that a tetrahedron?
Because you had to see the shadow effect. The shadow effect gives you the understanding.
On the bottom?
Yeah. So each one of those tiny little triangles, each one of those creates a tetrahedron based on the shadowing.
I see how the shadows make it look like that. Okay, I see.
So they're tetrahedrons. Now, where it gets beautiful is that the symbol for the underworld was a circle. And I'll get into how I know that in a second. But look at the underwater ruins. It was always amazing to see the flower, and I touched this flower, is that it's not a regular flower though. They're seeds. You see that? They're flower petals that are like seeds.
Sure.
Why? Because it's the underworld, and that's where they believe that all life originated from.
The one next to it looks different.
Well, that's because it's not a flower. That's a spiral.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm glad you pointed those out. So the symbol to the right is a counterclockwise spiral. And even though the one on the left is broken, I already know what it is. It's a clockwise spiral because they had to follow a blueprint. It's like an understanding of how everything had to be perfect symmetry and balanced based on their knowledge. And so why would you have a counterclockwise spiral and a clockwise spiral? Do you know? Think about the universe. What does a galaxy look like?
Spiral.
Exactly. They understood that the universe is a living thing. It's God or source, and that it breathes in, it expands, and it contracts. That's the nature of everything, expanding and contracting, and that the universe itself followed those models. And so they're putting that in to show the balance and harmony and how everything basically works.
Interesting.
So the last flower, it's really beautiful. What's the last realm? We did the underworld, which is the circle, right? Which is the circle, and we'll show those as we go. The last one is Ionis, because Ionis, the temple that's there, the holy temple, is a celestial temple. And what is it? A sunflower. So beautiful, isn't it? So poetic. Each flower represents its corresponding realm of reality. And not only that, but the underwater ruins forms a perfect circle. Do you see that structure?
Yeah.
If you swim above it, it's a perfect circle all the way around.
Wow.
Amazing achievement in the ancient world to do that. So they're taking the symbol. You remember the giant T's at Shavuos Tepe?
Yep.
And how there's T's in temples, but also within other things? It's the fractal relationship. So they're taking the idea that the circle, they're embedding as a symbol, and then designing the entire temple to be a 2 that represents it. So the underworld temple is a circle because it has to, because it represents the fractal nature of what it is.
Right.
It's beautiful. And so at Shavuos Tepe, you have giant T's. Why? Because they represent balance. And we're gonna get into that. So
let's take a quick pause. I gotta take a leak real quick.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
So we're going to go over what all this means now.
Okay.
We're going to go through the descriptions, some of the understandings, and also what it leads to, because it's profound where this goes, okay? For people to think this is already incredible as it is, we still have a lot more that's going to be even more mind-blowing. So the T, right? The step pyramid, if it represents the structure of the universe, then the T represents the balance of all of it. Because take it and you condense the symbols together, the stem of the T would represent the larger middle door, and then you get the left and right. See that? And so they understood that if you were trying to explain something, right? If you told me about what the structure of the universe was, that wouldn't really tell us what the purpose of everything we're doing, right? You'd have to be like, well, you understand the universe, but what are you trying to understand about it? You have to be like, well, what the importance of it is that the importance of the universe is finding balance, meaning that everything in life, doesn't matter what it is, remember this to everyone listening. The ancients believed that the key to everything was balance. It didn't matter what it was. Balance within, balance without, balance in the world around us, how we live, how we exist. Everything is about balance. They were obsessed with this idea of balance. And so they encode these T's all over the world. And I mean, even things you wouldn't even notice are T's. Like, for instance, I was just looking at the Temple of Seti in Abydos. The T's where you walk into the front, they're actually T's above. And people probably didn't even notice that there were T's the whole time.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
So are you saying that this T on both sides of it, it's almost like an inverse of the two sides? So if you look below the top on each sides of the trunk of the T, you're saying the left is the underworld and the right of it is the celestial world?
Yes. But the middle stem is the biggest, and that's where physical reality is manifested.
And the middle is where physical reality is. Okay.
That's why there's T's all over the bas-relief and why there's T's everywhere, because it's one thing for them to encode the understanding of it, but to them the goal, we could call it the goal, was that the teaching related around it was that once you understood the structure of it, the more important understanding was how it all worked and how balance was the key. See that?
Yeah.
So that was what they wanted us to understand, because we don't understand any of this today. Any of it. We don't live in balance with the earth at all. We don't live balanced with the universe. We don't even consider ourselves important in that way.
Yeah.
It's sad what we've become.
Do you see any connection between this and like binary code, like ones and zeros?
I think that you're looking at certain mathematical constants that are woven into this for sure. Now, I think that if we're gonna have some kind of a binary code like function, like computers with ones and zeros, I think for them it would be like 3, 6, and 9. So I think that's their code, which is why they embedded that into everything. All those circuit board type things you were saying, the temple layouts that look like circuit boards. Yeah. It's because that's their code is 3, 6, and 9. I think that once we can understand that, we can crack their technology too.
Do you know Jeffrey Drum? You know who he is?
I don't know him, but I know of him.
Are you familiar with his work?
A little bit.
How deep have you gone into it?
Only surface level.
It's fucking insane. He basically thinks that all the pyramids were like chemical manufacturing, industrial chemical plants.
Well, we're going to get into some of the purposes of that in a second. So I'll give you my perspective on that.
And you know how everything looks like a circuit board on the outside of it and like what you were showing? He literally drills down into the types of stones that are used.
I will too.
And some are heat conductive. Some of them are conductive of like electricity and stuff like that.
Yes.
And he has this crazy elaborate theory that ties all the pyramids together with the Serapeum, and as well as other pyramids that are in South America and Central America that have very similar layouts that like all fit into his theory. It's pretty bonkers.
Well, let me lay mine out and see if that fits too, because it's probably pretty similar. I don't think there was chemical plants.
Right.
But they are all related in this. Okay. So we'll get there. Yeah, we're gonna definitely move there next. So once I had that understanding, this all of a sudden made sense. My perspectives on this from studying it is I do believe this is one of the most important ancient artifacts that's ever existed, because it provides all of those motifs and symbols together into a shared teaching. And what it's showing that I believe, based on uncovering the entire code of this, is that you get the 2 lion guardians, right? Guarding the realms of reality, and then the eagle guardians above. So they understood that there were realm guardians needed for both. The eagle was always the celestial realm guardian. And then the lion was the realm guardian between the physical realms and the underworld. And so here you see them passing what we see all around the world, which is like a pine cone, right? Everywhere around the world. Well, I believe this is the first depiction.
Some people say it's an artichoke.
It's definitely a pine cone. It's sacred geometry. So what it is it's seeds of the tree of life. So the tree of life is in the center. They're basically pollinating and seeding the tree of life. And the pine cone, not only does it represent sacred geometry, but around the world we see it's passing knowledge. But what knowledge? See, that was always understood with the handbag or bucket, right? That they're holding that and they're passing the pine cone. But what we're looking at here, and I think it's without a doubt, is that's the first depiction of the pine cone ever depicted in that way, where it's the origin of all of it. So if we were to imagine every other civilization that came after that built these pyramids and structures and encoded this, they're all basing it on this very origin moment when something very, very special happened after Zayasudra in the Van region, where there was the beginnings of a golden age that was basically laid down there. And this bas-relief contains every teaching you can imagine to understand their entire knowledge system with all the other things that we're combining. For instance, the tree of life in the center is also a metaphor for consciousness. And they're showing feeding. They have the circle above their head, right in the middle door. You see that?
Yeah.
And then in their hand, they have not only a pine cone but a chalice or a cup.
Yeah.
Which means they're passing a spiritual or religious doctrine. Then you go further and you see that both of them are basically on either side of this balancing point between three pillars, three doors, see? Three trees. The same thing is repeated all over it. Three pyramids, see that? Three doorways. All of it is telling us one thing.
What country is this in again?
This is Turkey, Eastern Turkey around Van.
Got it.
It's telling us one thing. They're passing us the knowledge of how to reach our highest states to find ascension. Because look at what happens above the middle pyramid. See that? Keep going up there, Danny. The two eagles are guarding this flowering that has 7 spokes at the top. There are 7 colors in the visible light spectrum. There's also 7 chakras, main chakras in the human body. They're telling us that if we follow this knowledge to find balance, that we can literally find ascension. That's
Isn't
the path.
there 7 rays on like on Apollo or something?
That's that. They're always about the same thing over and over again. It's a repeating motif.
And it's like it's based off the Statue of Liberty is based off that. There's 7 rays on the crown.
Yep. And so you can see that repeating all over the world. In fact, that symbol in the center of the eagles that looks like a diamond with little swirls, you can see that built into our architectural areas in the United States. You can go to like old estates and see it in fences and stuff. I have pictures of it in fences. It's like we lost this knowledge and had no idea what it was anymore, but still encoded it into all kinds of things. So there's a lot more I can talk about this, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. There's a lot more to go over. So essentially what you're looking at is a model of the 3 different aspects of reality. Do you see how the middle has 3 levels?
Yeah.
That's the three levels of reality. So they're telling us that they're not in the physical reality. Look, you see how they're not in the physical one? Why? Because the upright pyramid is physical reality, and that sits where the arrow is at the top. They're not there. They're in the underworld. They're passing the knowledge of ascension from the underworld, Danny. Now imagine what would happen if the church blocked that. Now, this might sound kind of strange to people, but when you're going to ground, do you climb a ladder or do you sit on the ground to ground yourself with energy?
Sit on the ground.
Where does a tree grow from?
The ground.
Everything comes out of the ground. Everything is a relationship to that. So even though you go into a cave, you're not in the underworld, is it a representation of it? So for instance, the earth, sun, and the moon are also another representation of this. It's 3 repeats itself over and over and over again. And we're gonna get into that as we go. Now, check this out. This is Ionis, okay? Now, there's your realm guardians on the left and right. See how they're winged? All of them are winged because it's a celestial temple. That's why they all have wings. And so there's 3 different guardians that they understood. There is the eagle guardian, and they always have lion bodies. That's how we know the Sphinx is the lion. Because every single body of these guardians is a lion. They just have different heads.
Do you think the Sphinx had wings on it at one point?
No. because it wasn't a temple to the celestial.
Got it.
So this is a celestial temple. That's why they have
Okay.
wings. And so you have Haldi guarding the physical reality as like a human type of figure. And then you have above are the eagle head, the eagle guardian. And then below is a combination of the dragon and it's like a griffin. It's like a dragon lion.
Okay.
Okay. Now those three repeated everywhere at Ionis. That's what those guardians are all over the place. Now, there's a flame in the back, okay? That has two spokes to it. I don't know if you can zoom in on, I'd have to like, right here. Okay, so how do I probably can't do that, can I? Nope, I can't do that.
I can see it.
Okay, so right here is a symbol that repeats itself over and over again, besides the amazing Knights Templar cross.
Right.
See this symbol over here and over again?
Yeah.
Took me a long time to figure out what this meant. And it wasn't until I cracked this actual code that it made perfect sense. Now, this is a celestial motif. One is a ray of the sun, but another one is a flame, a holy flame, a metaphysical flame, like religion teaches us. And what was so beautiful about this is that there's only one Susi temple left at Ionis, but we know there was a second one. The same pillars that surround it are there, but there's nothing there any longer. The altar that used to be in that other temple, the Urartians moved over to the edge of this one. They also took all the alabaster floors from the old one and they moved it over to the outside of this and then built a castle on top. Archaeologists do not admit or acknowledge there's a second Susi temple that used to exist, but I know there was because the altar has only two symbols on it. Now, if I told you that the Cosmogram was a big deal that broke this whole thing open, this might be even bigger. This is probably the most significant thing I've ever discovered in my life. And I mean, those temple layouts and the connections of lost civilizations is amazing. Mm-hmm. But this connects something on a whole nother level. This connects what humanity needs most. Not just our origins and who we are, but what about our connection to God? What about our connection to Source? Who are we? What are we a part of? Well, the altar contains only two symbols repeating over and over again. And I'm going to show them in a second. It's a flame and a circle over and over and over again. Only two symbols, and they have guardians around all of them. Now, this temple only has the celestial symbols to it. It has no underworld symbols to it.
Okay.
Except for the altar. But because the same symbols repeat and they had the same pillar system, we know there was once an underworld temple that the Urartians dismantled. Now, why they did that, I don't know. Maybe they thought it was evil. I don't know why they did. But they dismantled it and took everything out of it.
Okay.
Which means that there was once a specific type of Susi temple for the celestial and a specific Susi temple for the underworld. How do you think Gilgamesh got to the underworld? Some kind of a realm gateway. Okay? Which is what we're about to get into. Okay, and we even have the capability, because we can put the blueprint back together,
right,
because everything's a symmetry, we could actually rebuild this temple. Okay. It's a temple to the underworld. Now,
and what is this a temple to right here that we were just looking at with the big white thing in the middle?
I'm showing you that there was two Susi temples. Okay, you're in the background is the only one that's left still. Mm-hmm. It's the one on the right. It's the celestial Susi temple.
Got it.
What I'm showing is that there once was another one because of the altar. Now I'm going to show the altar.
Okay.
So this is where it gets into something so pivotal that you thought lost civilizations was a big deal. Proving them. This will reshape humanity. I mean that. I anticipate this creates an entire new world religion. No joke. I'm serious. Hermeticism will become the new world religion because of this. Let me go over why. That's a huge, bold statement, I know. Let me explain what I mean by that. On the altar, the two symbols that repeat over and over again are the flame and the circle. Now, this rod in the center is a pure gold rod. And it used to...
Where is it? Where is the flame in the circle here?
Flame in the circle is over and over again. This is the same thing as this. This is drawn out by like a computer. So like they took, you know how they're basically, if you're going to go old school with like a piece of paper and a pencil,
I
right?
see what
You
you're
put it
saying.
over the top of that and you sketch out what it was.
Okay,
type of
now
thing.
wait, the flame is under that arrow. There's two flames.
Yes. So here is the flame.
Got it.
Over and over again. And then here's the circle over and over again. You see that? Right here. Now, each one of these are guardians. This is your underworld guardian. This is like your griffin. Okay. And then you get, you can't see all of it because it's broken. I only have a piece of it. But over here, you can see them, right? Here's your eagle-headed god. Here's your Enki Haldi physical reality guardian. And then here's your underworld guardian. Now,
Got it.
each one of them is guarding only two things. There's nothing else that they're guarding. Over and over again, the flame in the circle, three of them. See that as a candelabra.
Yeah.
Now, this rod right here is a pure gold rod. It's the only one that survived. And it also has the flame in the circle repeating. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Those would slide
Where
into
was this
Ionis.
found? Where was this rod found?
Ionis. And so my theory is that these rods slid into the altar of Ionis because there's these perfect holes that I've already determined would be the right ratio and size to slip these gold rods into gold. Some kind of technology.
Do you have a picture of these holes?
Yeah, I can. It's not the best. I was hoping it would be a lot better.
Ionis.
So the altar itself was a giant T. I'm sure that makes sense. You'd have to look at it from a different angle, but basically you can see it from the top how it fits in like that. Now, the holes on the bottom are perfect for each of those gold rods to slide into.
How deep are those holes?
Well, they're at least the width is correct for them to slide into. I don't know exactly how far back in they go.
Okay.
So I have to admit that, but
They don't look super deep. They look maybe a couple inches deep.
they fit the perfect parameters of that metal rod,
Okay.
of that gold rod. I should say, not metal, it's gold, pure gold. And that's important because gold through ancient alchemy has always been considered very, very powerful and sacred and very important.
Right.
So anyway, we're going to go back to where we were here. Hold on.
How many of these gold rods are there?
The only one that survived.
Okay.
So the thinking is that the Urartians most likely use the other ones because they're gold. Here, let's get back to where we were now. Okay, so we're back. So that's the gold rod that would slide in each one of them. And of course, it has the same symbols.
You're hypothesizing that it would slide in there. You're just saying it's a similar size.
Well, there's no other purpose for it because the holes exactly match the size of those. So I measured the outside dimension of the width of it. And it fits exactly, like it would fit just perfectly inside there.
Okay.
So I mean, yes, that is a theory I have.
Right.
But look at the top. You also have the see the spirals up here,
Yep.
just like on the underwater ruins. Okay. So this is where I made a profound connection. And when I mean profound, I mean very, very significant to history. Because it's one thing to prove lost civilizations. It's another thing to prove like our relationship to God in the universe. And that's what this does. So imagine the most sacred temple of all of Ionis, right? The most sacred temple. And the whole thing is focused around these only two symbols, all of it. The most important two symbols of all. What are they? Well, that's where this came in. I have been a long study of mystery schools, Hermeticism. And so we were talking a little about this off air a bit before we started.
Yeah.
The reason I discovered this and that archaeologists and other academics and brilliant minds didn't is that you had to be an initiate, a deep initiate into mystery schools, or you never would have known what any of these things mean.
What's a mystery school?
Mystery schools are what used to exist for high level adepts of the greatest knowledge of the
started
universe. And you would imagine special schools existed way back in deep antiquity, in which not everyone was necessarily a student, but people who were identified as being special or unique in that kind of way were brought in to these mystery schools to be taught the secrets of everything. Okay, the origins of all secret societies and mystery schools came from this. They're all fragmented versions of this. Now, the reason why most people don't know about mystery schools or Hermeticism is because it has been severely demonized by the church for centuries. And
Where does Hermeticism come from?
Hermeticism comes from Hermes. Now, Hermes is the Greek god of knowledge. He's the equivalent of Thoth in Egypt. They're archetypal messengers. They're messengers of ages. They basically provide vast wisdom during a time when the stability of that age threatens the balance that exists. the messenger and the knowledge through messengers emerges, meaning that this knowledge will never be allowed to die.
So what does Hermeticism actually mean?
We're going to get into that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. Hold on. You're jumping ahead just a little bit too far here. We're going to go all over Hermeticism in a second. Hermeticism, well, I guess I'll do it right now. So Hermeticism is based on the oldest knowledge that exists, period. It's what we used to consider to be the truth of everything in reality. It's based on what's called natural law. So it's understanding how the universe functions, understanding how every relationship functions. As above, so below. As within, so without. That's based on an understanding of relationships, meaning that there is no separation between this and above. Everything's like a great stage or play,
Sure.
right? Everything's all working together like an orchestra. All like music instruments are playing some beautiful play that we're acting on. We're on the stage of this great play.
Sure. Balance, nature, the universe,
all of it.
Physics.
Yeah. And so Hermeticism, what it was based on the oldest level of knowledge that existed for how everything functioned. And Hermes just happened to be the last of those archetypal messenger gods that existed before we sort of left that time period in that age. So he's exactly like Thoth. You see Thoth, the ibis, right, in Egypt, who is passing all the knowledge. It's the same thing. They may be a real person, but they're an archetype that emerges, that has
Sure.
to. Meaning that this knowledge is fundamental to the universe. It can't be lost. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It has to emerge every time the balance is disrupted everywhere.
Good and evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have been obsessed with this passage. So if you were to take Hermeticism and think of it like a Bible, right? All the knowledge together. This is the most important piece of all of Hermeticism. This right here. How do I know that? Because it's the core of the highest level knowledge. Now, this story comes from what's called the Hermetica that I have on my coffee table every day I sit next to and read. And in this, Hermes, the great god, the great Greek god, he has a conversation with the great dragon, who's Poimander, which is God of the universe. It's considered a dragon for all those who are wondering, okay? Where the dragon motif comes in. He says, I wish to understand the nature of God or the Father, and the nature of man, right? And God or Poimander goes to basically states, do you want to read it for us?
No, you can do it.
Okay, it says, then Hermes asked how the righteous and wise pass to God, to which Poimander replied, that which the word of God said, because the Father of all things consists of life and light, whereof man is made. If therefore a man shall learn and understand the nature of life and light, then he shall pass into the eternity of life and light. Meaning basically the highest level knowledge possible of the nature of us, the nature of God, and our relationship to God.
Okay.
That we are basically the same thing. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Well, guess what the two symbols repeating on the altar are over and over again? The flame and the circle and the flame. Mm-hmm. Life and light. The only two symbols repeating everywhere on the rod, on the altar, everywhere, meaning that Hermeticism, this can prove that this is the origin of the oldest knowledge that ever existed. Now, wait till you see what happened to Hermeticism as I go forward. So they encode this into the oldest structures ever built. And then Hermeticism comes out of it later. This is the origin, all that knowledge, right? On the Kef bas-relief, above, below, as within, without, right?
Right.
Symmetry, the doorways, all of it. And then they encode this as the core of all of it. So if you think those things were important, Ionis is in the center of all those things. And its core focus, the circle and the flame, life and light. Life is always a circle. It's always shown as a circle. And we know that it's life because of its depictions all over the underworld and the trees, right? It's life. And then the flame is the holy flame, just like in religion teaches us. It's the holy flame. It's what we have inside each one of us, meaning that we are made of only two things, life and light. And that they're basically teaching us the path to ascension. Okay, so what is Hermeticism? For those who are listening to this, Hermeticism is a philosophical tradition concerned with the underlying order of reality itself. It teaches that the universe operates according to consistent principles that link mind, nature, and the cosmos, and that these principles can be understood through symbolism, geometry, and observation, rather than belief or doctrine. They're all based on governing reality. Reality is ordered, intelligent, interconnected. It's all a system. It's all balanced. Knowledge is conveyed through symbolism and allegory. They always emphasize the harmony of consciousness, nature, and the cosmos. And they encode it in the most important things possible. So
Right.
this may be another thing that's going to completely shock people, is that this whole story and how this emerged, like how Hermeticism was destroyed, but what it led to before it was destroyed. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this time period in which Hermeticism was basically banned and destroyed, and how Leonardo da Vinci and other secret societies were trying to maintain this knowledge. So the story goes that, if you look it up and you're really curious, is that in the 15th century, in the 1400s, during this time period of Constantinople collapsing, this is the Byzantine Empire, right? You have Hermeticism is widely practiced. In fact, the early origins of Christianity was based on Hermeticism. Most people don't know that. And it was being practiced all around the ancient world. In fact, Constantinople was the center of the ancient world at that time. Well, what happened was, as the Byzantine Empire is transferring over into Christianity in a more powerful way, you're seeing a lot of friction with people that are still studying Hermeticism. Constantinople became a place where you couldn't freely practice those things any longer. So what happened? Hundreds, if not thousands of people from Greece and Western Turkey, that region, migrated somewhere. All of them. They all migrated to one place. Florence, Italy. Mid-1400s, 15th century, Florence, Italy becomes the center of the intellectual world. Why? Because Hermeticism is brought there. Okay? So what happens? Da Vinci learns everything about it. Da Vinci's in secret societies. Da Vinci is an initiate. Remember this. Da Vinci is an initiate of mystery schools. That's what he is. So he paints very, very clever things to protect this knowledge, okay? Not only is the table a T, but you have the 3 doors in the back, with the middle door being the biggest, right behind Jesus. Same concept. And then if you get into the idea that man is like the cosmos with a Vitruvian man, and it is the T, you start to see this relationship that is not separate between us and the cosmos at all. And that they understood that we're actually a fundamental part of the expression of the entire universe itself.
Right.
So I want to go over what happened to Hermeticism. This is super important to us to understand. There's a very evil man in history that nobody has ever heard of called Isaac Casaubon. Welcome Isaac Casaubon back into history. Isaac Casaubon was an expert in ancient antiquities, ancient texts.
When did he live?
He died in like 1640 something, in the mid 1600s, and he was born around like 14 something, right? Okay. So that was the time period, right during this Leonardo da Vinci, but later on time period. So Isaac Casaubon would be like after Da Vinci, okay? If you want to think of it as a time period.
Right.
So what's happening right now? Christianity has risen very significantly in the Roman Byzantine area. It's becoming very significant, and they want a reason to cut off all ties to Hermeticism. They don't want Hermeticism being involved in anything to do with religion or spirituality. There's interest involved in that in the church. So what they do is very clever. They hire Isaac Casaubon because he's an expert in antiquities. They say, Isaac, we need you to discredit the Hermeticism. And he's not told that. He's told, we need you to date what the age is of what we think is the oldest, text. So Isaac Casaubon takes the Hermetica and he studies the pages and the ink, and he can tell when things were written and whatever it is. And he determines that the version that people are reading of the Hermetica is from Alexandria. So the scribes of Alexandria, Egypt. But the problem is that it's been rewritten for thousands of years before that. But he tried to claim that the version that they're that they're studying or using as the Bible, in that kind of consensus, is not genuine. It's not as old as the teachings of Moses. See, this is super important to understand. So you had Hermeticism that was supposed to be older than teachings of Moses. Teachings of Moses are here. They don't like that because these need to supersede this. You see that? So what they do is they discredit the Hermetica as saying that the version that they wrote was from Alexandria and that the teachings of Moses are actually older. Mm-hmm. Then they completely discredit Hermeticism, and they basically go on a witch hunt throughout Europe and burn people to stake and kill whoever is practicing. It's pagans and druids, all that stuff. Yeah. It's all based on this.
Yeah.
It's now that pagans and druids, the druid St. Patrick story is earlier, but it's based on the same prosecution of this knowledge. They wanted to stamp out Hermeticism because it's a threat to everything.
Yeah.
It takes the power away from all religion.
It's easier to control when there's one God.
It's in all ways, right? So they banish Hermeticism. It becomes illegal. People get killed for it. Hundreds, if not thousands, get burned at the stake for it. If you practice it, they call them witches, remember? Mm-hmm. They burn them all at the stake. That's what all of that was. All of that throughout history has been this. The blocking off of Hermeticism of the oldest knowledge possible so that the church can rewrite their own story. So Hermeticism dies. Christianity rises up. It gets buried. It exists only in fringe areas of the world. People start studying it a little bit. I've been studying it for at least 4 or 5 years. I've been fascinated by it. I understood that Hermetic teachings seem to incorporate everything that the ancient world had all together in one. I recognized how important it was, a long time ago. And now to find that the altar proves that Hermeticism, the origins of the most important knowledge of everything.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely an interesting connection.
It changes the whole ballgame. And what it teaches us is this, is that they explain to us that everything in the universe is based on fractals. But we've been told the opposite. We've been engineered and conditioned our entire lives to make us believe that we're nothing and that we're insignificant and we're not something that's a part of the entire universe. They're trying to have us understand that if not only are we a part of the entire universe, but we're the great actors of it. They explain to us that we are the manifestation of all of these things that are playing out here. And that a human eye looks like a nebula and a birth of a cell looks like a star and a brain cell looks like a universe because everything is based on a fractal source code. So what they understood was that the universe itself is not dead, empty space, that it's a giant source field of consciousness, the entire universe itself. And that the reason why people tap into it when they become healthy is because you turn your body into a temple in and the temple out. That's why ancient secret societies were trying to create perfect societies based on this, because they recognize the relationship of the temple, the body temple, and the temple outward to create that perfect synergy of the all. That's why there's 3 pyramids of Giza, because each one of them represents the relationship between the earth, sun, and the moon. And it's a fractal relationship that builds off of the Trinity within us. Do you know that the first triptych Trinity is inside us? Mind, body, and spirit. We're the first triptych. It's us. We're a key component of this entire thing. In fact, I don't even think that the technologies of this even work without us. Like that's the entire purpose of...
So the pyramids were supposed to symbolize that.
No. So get this. It gets even better. The 3 pyramids, based on the specific stone they're using, limestone is an insulator on the outside, right? And then granite has an incredible piezoelectric properties of that.
Yeah.
When you start looking at the relationship between first us, then the 3 pyramids, and the relationship between Earth, Sun, and the Moon, 3, 3, 3. There's one final 3. Remember, the universe is made of 3 parts. Yep. So the 3 parts keep repeating themselves in everything. That's what's so beautiful about it. It's a fractal relationship that repeats on a greater and greater scale. And so they understood that on every level, which means that the last triptych, Orion's belt, the 3 belt stars of Orion, that's why they were pointed to that. What I believe it created
the pyramids?
Yeah. That's why I believe it created some kind of a conscious technology that's like a stargate, but not a physical stargate. But I firmly believe that these are realm gateways to not only realms of reality, but other aspects of the universe that we don't even understand yet. and uses consciousness as the ultimate form of technology to incorporate the human into what looks like a system that gets created based on fractal geometry that gets bigger and bigger, and then allows them to create a synergy with the universe. Now, let me show you what I mean by that. Take a look at these images. On the left is a place called Bapwan. It's in Cambodia.
Okay.
It's one of the places that I filmed as part of the documentary. Off to the side, in this really remote part of it that nobody goes to, that's overgrown in the jungle, I found, with Dr. Robert Schock and the team, we found these fractal miniature temples that look exactly like the larger versions next to it.
Okay.
They're miniature versions of it. They were creating the fractal relationship of each one being smaller to bigger to bigger to bigger, which is the same relationship as us to the universe and Earth to the stars and everything.
Right.
So they're creating these miniature temple versions. But not only that, on the right side, that's Hans Orheim, he's an archaeologist on our team. That's a miniature version of the larger temples right above it. So I could never figure it out. I'm walking up the mountain along these temple ruins, and there's all these little miniature versions. I'm like, what are these? It wasn't until I understood that's what they were building. It was these relationships between fractal geometry everywhere. That's why the T's get bigger and bigger and everything is that relationship. That's what they understood. Everything in the universe is connected. Everything. We are part of something so vast and important. And unfortunately, we forgot. And it has allowed us to have so much disconnection that we are literally living in the inverse version of what we're supposed to be. They understood that. And this is the last slide, is I just want to, have this be the part we can kind of bring this home, is that they understood that this blueprint of how everything works is essential for a civilization, or it will destroy itself eventually. Essential. Which is why when I showed you Gilgamesh going and finding the Mies with Zayasudra, he lost them after. That's why the Mies never made it into our society after Uruk, because Gilgamesh became obsessed with his own immortality. He tried to use them for his own superiority, and he didn't give them back, and humanity lost all of this. And it became fragmented in certain secret societies and eventually used to control us. Because if you know how humanity can reach its optimal form, you also know the opposite.
Wow.
So basically, they're leaving us the greatest knowledge of the universe and humanity and God and what we are into their structures so that we can find our way back.
So you think that the pyramids were not just symbolic? You think they opened up some sort of like stargate?
Yes. There's a technology that's involved here. How do you think Gilgamesh got to the underworld? You have to go through.
How do you think Gilgamesh got to the underworld?
I think it got through at Ionis from the underworld Susi temple. Those Susi temples, I believe their purpose were literally realm gateways. That's what they are. A human would lay on the altar, which was a T, and it would literally be a realm gateway to take consciousness, not your physical body, consciousness, and allow you to go to other realms of reality.
Do you think there was drugs involved?
I don't know what they used to get there, but it certainly was a deep alignment and a balance in meditation. Let me give you an example how beautiful this whole thing is.
When was that cup of best dated to, Stephen? That Tampa, the University of Tampa, have you heard of that? The cup of Bes?
No.
I guess Bes was a god that the Egyptians worshipped. I don't know the exact dates, but there was a cup that was found, an ancient Egyptian cup that was found, and they did an analysis on the inside of it to determine what was held in that cup. And they found, there it is. Okay, 2,200-year-old hallucinogenic ritual found.
Oh, plant psychedelics have always been a critical element in all of these things, of course. We know the Egyptians highly valued lotus as their psychedelic.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I'm for sure. I mean, these are all just things to help. What they do is they bridge and separate us from being locked into physical reality so that we can, it's like you take the divider between those realities, and you kind of make that an easy, seamless way to go between. Yeah, you dissolve it. Thank you.
Yeah. And
so I believe that what we're looking at are highly advanced technologies that are so much more advanced than we can ever imagine. We're so sorry, but I think we're so stupid thinking that we're going to build all these ships to fly everywhere. The journey's always been within. And not only that, but they're building technologies that we can take consciousness and travel the stars. What are we doing?
Yeah, I think you're right.
We could be doing the most incredible things. You imagine if this blueprint right here, right? And I can close this out now because we're done, but I'm going to end on that. It's the last thing. That's Cambodia. This blueprint, you imagine how far we've gone from this? Just think about it for a minute, Danny. How far has our civilization gone from this? From what they knew?
It's certainly on a completely different path.
Now imagine we found this now. Now what's going to happen? We found everything. We found our way back. It's always been a circle. Do you realize that there's always been this fractal journey that's always described in the entire universe and within the human experience? It is that you start in a place where you know everything. Humanity, we start from an origin point, right? From source. The whole idea is that this is beautiful design woven into it. It's a story. It's a hero's journey where you're supposed to forget everything. Humanity. It's deliberate. You're supposed to forget everything and wander. And then you're supposed to find your way back and then end up right where you started. Perfect circle. Over and over and over again. It's a story that repeats itself across time. It's the oldest story that's ever been known. The fractal relationship for our story and our consciousness to the universe is profound. Humanity thinks that we're separate from the cosmos. We are the great stage of the cosmos. And what is playing out here is the greatest story ever told. We just forgot it.
Yeah. It's certainly fascinating, man. It's hard to, so essentially when we were on this path, we were continuing this until the church came around and sort of pushed this to the side and made the church the main story, tried to get control of the world and civilization.
They understood that if you follow this, you can never be controlled by anybody.
Right.
You would always be your own temple. You could find ascension through your own means. You wouldn't need any intermediary. That's dangerous because you can't control that. So what do? They discredit all of it, burn everybody that practices it alive on stakes, right? And then they basically banish it so nobody hears about it, doesn't think it's anything, and it's the truth all along. And now with this ancient code, we can prove it. We can bring all this back. We can bring humanity back into balance, into equilibrium. We can bring them back to being gods of the universe again. That's what we're supposed to be all along. We just forgot.
It's wild shit, bro. It's fucking wild.
I know it's.
I don't know how you. It's certainly fascinating, and I can see how you can incorporate this stuff into your life and kind of like fall down the rabbit hole and get consumed by it. But I certainly don't see how any path to our society returning to some sort of a knowledge or incorporating something like that back into
what do you mean?
Society in a greater way.
How do you not see that?
How do you?
How would you possibly ignore that? You think that's going to be able to stay?
I can't ignore it personally, but I don't see how you could get the structures and the systems of society today to accept something like this.
I am 42 years old. I have a lifetime to change this world, and I won't stop until this blueprint and this code is embedded into our culture again. You can't stop this. There is no going back. It is already out. This world that we've created based on unbalance, destroying the planet, killing each other, being completely disconnected to everything, that nightmare is about to end. And whether or not you can see that it's going to happen in the future, it's inevitable. It just matters how long it's going to take. This old world that we have is dying, and it should die. All the stuff we built, it's not built on what matters. Imagine what we could do with this. Imagine the stone temples and structures we could build. Imagine the society we could build with coherence, with balance in everything in the universe and earth. Imagine what we could accomplish. That is precisely what the entire purpose of Freemasonry and secret societies was. The temple in and temple out. They understand that the basis of a society was this knowledge and deep understanding of philosophy and all of that. That's what they understood was the core. And if you lost that, if it was degraded, you would basically always have a civilization that would go down a destructive path and eventually would destroy itself. You see, let me answer what you just said. You said that I can't see this being incorporated into our civilization. If this doesn't, here's a bold statement. If this doesn't, we will destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
That is why this is emerging now.
I think you probably would need some sort of a large scale destruction before you could see something like this be rebirthed.
Why is that?
I think you need something catastrophic.
Do you not think that people want this already? How many? If I walked up to someone in the street,
I agree with you. I think people want it, but I think you have to have a massive civilizational global shift in consciousness.
What about an internet that's all over the world that everybody can 2 seconds find information at?
What about it?
What happens if something like this goes viral? What if this is that viral show that just takes off? All it needs is to have the seed. It just needs to have the seed planted in the right way. That's all it needs. Is that we don't need academics or higher level people to bow down to this. We need a revolution. We need a new renaissance. We need a renaissance of the people. That's why I'm calling this citizen archaeology. Let's take back our story. Let's take back the knowledge that we once embodied in everything that we did, and let's remember everything that we can be again. Because we don't need any high-level presidents or academics or people that supposedly rule this world to determine this for us. It's time for us to take back our lives here. We can live that life again, and we're supposed to.
Yeah, you would just need a complete destruction of the system that exists.
Why do you think it has to be torn down? Why not slow integration of things changing over time?
Because
don't you see that already happening?
That's the only way things have changed in the past is being torn down.
But don't you see
rebuilt.
that the things that have already become integrated into our culture? Look at how many people are already eating organic and from farms and not wanting factory food anymore. Look at all the people that are turning stupid TVs off and not even having it anymore. Look at all the people that are just going to ancient sites and becoming so interested in all this stuff again. The movement is already here. It doesn't need to start. It's already here. This is just coming at the perfect time. I see such potential for this. And I know there's so many obstacles still. There's so much for us to get by.
Yeah.
It won't matter because this is something that can't be stopped. It's a reason why it emerges during these ages. It will transform us. It doesn't mean, I'm not advocating for a tear down of our entire world. That would be chaos. Chaos would violate the blueprint of balance. You can't do that. Anything that violates the blueprint, you can't do. Meaning that you have to live in a balanced state. So how would we do this in a balanced way? Slow integration, which is exactly how it's going to happen. Piece by piece. The first piece that's going to change, lost civilizations. I'll map it out for you. Want to know how the trajectory goes?
Yeah.
Lost civilizations gets mapped out. Finally prove lost civilizations exist. Then everybody asks what they were like. Who were we? Then once they go into who were we, then this all comes out. Simple as that. It's a baby step process that'll lead to an inevitable conclusion and an outcome. And I know that before I die.
You think it'll happen in our lifetimes?
Before I die.
Really?
Mark my words,
Wow.
Daniel.
I love your optimism.
Before I die, this world will be completely different than it is now.
I agree with that. I agree with that statement. I just, it's hard to be optimistic in the times we live in, man. When you have these global empires battling over shit that's in the Bible.
Danny, it's like a child trying to grow up. They always have tantrums. Remember, it is always darkest just before the dawn. We're at that point right now.
You sound like a prophet right now.
Well, I can tell you that this age of transformation or transferring into the age of Aquarius from the age of Pisces. Look at how bad Pisces was. Look at how awful it was. If you have a balance of another age, just imagine what the opposite of that would be. You can't have, remember this, you can't have a golden age during Aquarius if you don't have the opposite the previous age. That's what balance is. Every age must balance itself, meaning that Aquarius can only be that beautiful if Pisces was that dark. Everything's perfectly designed the way it's supposed to. And you know what? It's okay if it looks like it's a challenging road ahead of us, because it is. We already have this though. Now we just need to incorporate it. Piece by piece, Daniel. This is it. This is when everything changes. Are you ready?
I'm ready, brother. I love your optimism. It's fascinating shit. Where can people find more of your work?
Yeah, please check out. Like, I put my heart and soul into The Missing Key, the book that lays out this entire thing. It lays out all the models, I have an entire codex for what everything means, the whole journey, the discovery. And please, check out my YouTube at Matthew LaCroix, and my website, The Stage of Time. But truly appreciate these conversations. We're gonna have to have another one again.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you keep going deeper and deeper every single time, and this has been a wild one for sure. Thanks again, dude. We'll link all your stuff below. And that's all, folks.